scene opens with an air of mystery, the stage set for something big to go down. A train chugs along, smoke billowing out like it's in a hurry to get somewhere important. Zeke Draker, our protagonist, is caught off guard, never expecting to find himself heading toward the infamous Black Knight Yaksha. Inside the train, Zeke sits with Andre, Asta, and Diego. Andre drops some wisdom, explaining that students can't just be sent off alone, especially with all the extra details they need to know. Andre takes the lead, asking if everyone is aware of what kind of place Delphoa is. He reminds them that they did learn a basic explanation during class, but it's time for a refresher. Unlike other places, mages are favored in Delphoa. Zeke seems to get it, understanding that this place is different. Andre nods in agreement, confirming that Delphoa indeed has quite the unique system. It's not your everyday magical setup. The Knights of Delphoa are a different breed, not like the others. They have their own priorities and ways of doing things. Andre paints a vivid picture, explaining how the Knights of Delphoa drive into their enemies with their shields, while the mages attack from the back. It's a well-oiled, if not a bit intense, machine. Asta raised his hand, looking a bit confused. He wondered about the potential damage to the allies fighting the enemies in such a formation. Andre nodded, acknowledging it as a good question. Andre explained that Delphoa's knights train more often with running shields, which is why Valhalla's graduates aren't exactly lining up to join them. Like, who wants to be a gym buddy with a shield? Diego chimed in, confused and a bit miffed. What kind of knights are only for the mages? That means they don't even consider the non-mages, yo. Andre nodded, pleased that they understood. He mentioned they shouldn't be too surprised once they arrive in Delphoa. Spoiler alert, the mages there are a bit full of themselves. Andre continued, saying that the mages in Delphoa are annoyingly arrogant. Like they need a reality check, am I right? Andre introduced himself as an assistant professor from Valhalla, Andre Draker. Nice to meet you, indeed. As they shook hands, someone thought it was an honor to have someone from the Draker family dispatched. Like, pinch me, I must be dreaming. Jorge stepped forward, introducing himself as the captain of Delphoa's 8th Knights. Plot twist, he's not a mage, but he plays one on TV. Andre stepped up, introducing the top cadets from Valhalla. No big deal, just the best of the best. Totally no pressure or anything. Jorge laughed it off, saying he trusted them. Classic Jorge. He then mentioned the captain waiting inside the carriage, like it was some big reveal. Diego was confused, wondering if Jorge was the captain. Zeke told him to keep quiet, probably to avoid any more awkwardness. This is Delphoa, after all. Land of surprises and plot twists. The carriage door opened, revealing... Well, let's just say the suspense was killing everyone. The captain stepped out, looking intense. Like really intense. Like he just came out of an intense boot camp. Diego couldn't help but comment on the captain's appearance, saying he looked like a total jerk. Zeke told Diego to keep quiet, probably to avoid any more drama. Zeke realized that the guy was Delphoa's mage captain. Plot twist, the knight captain was totally sucking up to him. Zeke couldn't help but stare at the captain, wondering what kind of drama was about to unfold. Jorge, looking as chill as ever, drops a bombshell. The captain is bailing on the group, deciding to roll out solo. Diego's face was a mix of confusion and disbelief. Jorge casually mentions that the captain is off to find another carriage, leaving Diego utterly bewildered. Before anyone could react, the carriage was already pulling away. Diego was fuming, feeling like they were being dismissed like yesterday's leftovers. Diego was heated, ranting about how this wasn't the plan. They were supposed to be on a collaboration mission, not getting ghosted by their own captain. Out of nowhere, the main character decides to kick Diego's shin, probably trying to snap him out of his tantrum. Diego hits the ground, clutching his leg and yelling about some demon and wondering why Professor Andre isn't stepping in. Professor Andre finally speaks up, dropping some wisdom about how this kind of situation is going to be a regular thing once they graduate and become full-fledged knights. The captain glances back from the carriage, his expression serious as he tells them to remember this moment. The scene shifts underground, leaving everyone to ponder what just went down and what's coming next. Laying down, Zeke couldn't help but notice how different everything felt. The vibe was off and he was here for a twirl, not really, but he had to deal with it. Reflecting on their new digs, Zeke thought about how rundown the place seemed. It was like they had thrown it together last minute. Definitely not the 5-star accommodations he was dreaming of. But then again, the mage facilities they passed on the way were decked out like they had all the gold in the realm. Zeke wasn't expecting much to begin with, But the contrast was something else. Deciding he needed a breather, Zeke got up and headed out. Fresh air was calling his name, and he wasn't about to say no. Walking around, Zeke shrugged off the less-than-stellar treatment. He had been through worse in his past life, so this was practically a walk in the park. But what really had him worried was the Black Knight Yaksha mission. That was the big unknown, and it was weighing on his mind. During the strategy meeting, the knights and Captain Jorge just stood there while the mages did all the talking. It was like they were extras in their own movie. Zeke knew things were bad, but he didn't think they'd be this bad. Just as he was lost in thought, a guy stopped right in front of him, asking what he was doing there all alone. Zeke looked at the person, sizing them up. This guy was definitely someone, but who exactly? Zeke's eyes widened in recognition. The mage captain from earlier. Well, at least he had something to say, so this encounter might not be a total waste. The mage captain went on, suggesting that Zeke and his team from Valhalla should just go back quietly. No need to make things annoying by getting swept into the magic. Zeke felt his temper flare. Why even request a collaboration if this was going to be the case? He wished he could just beat the guy up and be done with it. The mage captain's gaze dropped to Zeke's gloves, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his eyes. The mage captain asked if Zeke was a pure-blooded Draker Awakener, his tone laced with a sudden intensity. Zeke confirmed it, a hint of confusion creeping into his voice. Was there something wrong with that? The mage captain seemed to take offense, demanding how dare Zeke speak so arrogantly to him. Gritting his teeth, the mage captain warned Zeke not to take those gloves off, his voice tight with restrained anger. With a final glare, the mage captain turned to walk away, tossing over his shoulder that if Zeke wanted to finish the mission and return safely, he'd heed his warning. Zeke watched the mage captain leave, muttering to himself about the man's sensitivity. He couldn't help but think about how rare it was for pure-blooded awakened mages to have the power to disrupt mana like that. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to him, hesitantly questioning if it was really Zeke. Zeke turned to see a man he hadn't seen in a long time, stuttering as he tried to confirm Zeke's identity. Zeke's eyes widened as he recognized the man. It was Professor Fannin. Fannin, laughing, confirmed Zeke's suspicion. Fannin walked up to Zeke, greeting him warmly and asking how he'd been. Zeke responded that he'd been good, but couldn't help but wonder why Fannin was there. Fannin explained that he thought research alone was lacking, so he volunteered to enlist. There was no better place to gain experience as a mage than where they were. Fannin then asked Zeke what brought him there. Zeke responded that he was there for the Black Knight Yaksha mission. Fannin looked shocked, simply responding with a disbelieving what. Fannin then asked Zeke to come with him for a moment. Zeke, confused, asked why. Zeke looked at Fannin, waiting for an explanation, wondering what this was all about. Fannin stood there, silent for a moment, before Zeke finally broke the silence, asking what Fannin had to say to him. The tension in the air was palpable as Zeke waited for Fannin's response. Zeke's confusion grew as he asked if Fannin was indeed Professor Fannin. Fannin looked at Zeke and dropped a bombshell, stating that Zeke could not go out on tomorrow's mission. Zeke was taken aback, asking what Fannin meant by that. Fannin gave Zeke an intense look, explaining that he must not go on that mission as it was planned to fail. Zeke was shocked to hear this, his mind racing with questions and disbelief. Like, what was even happening right now? Zeke stood there, his mind still reeling from the bombshell that had just been dropped on him. Night had fallen, and the house was quiet except for Diego's sudden exclamation. He had just realized something was very, very wrong. Zeke looked over at Diego, who was clearly exhausted, like, seriously sleep-deprived, as if he hadn't caught a wink of sleep at all. Zeke's thoughts drifted back to Professor Fannin. The professor had clammed up, refusing to say more, but his words echoed in Zeke's mind. What did he mean by it was planned to fail? As a mage captain, Zeke could only think of two scenarios. Either there was some serious corruption going on within the higher-ups of the raid squad, or the other possibility was that they had some kind of deal with the people they were supposed to be raiding. Delphoa was known for its harsh mage hierarchies, but even so, it seemed unlikely that the military would be that corrupt. Like, sure, there might be some shady dealings, but rampant corruption? That seemed a bit much. If there was something wrong, it was more likely that there was some kind of alliance with the people they were supposed to be raiding, which meant Zeke had to consider the second possibility. Like, what if the people they were raiding were actually in cahoots with the military? The mage captain lined up his troops into formation and started barking orders like a drill sergeant on energy drinks. Groups 1 to 3 were told to go up the sides of the mountain. Groups 4 to 6 were to fight head-on, because apparently, subtlety wasn't on the menu today. The captain turned to Jorge, asking if there were any complaints. Jorge, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, simply shook his head. The captain started to give more orders, but Zeke decided to interrupt, raising his hand like a student with a burning question. Zeke asked what they should actually do because standing around wasn't really his style. The captain looked like he was about to blow a fuse. He reminded Zeke that he had told him to do nothing yesterday, but Zeke wasn't having it. He dropped a bombshell, announcing that he was a blue knight and that Diego and Asta were purple knights. The captain was left speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Zeke gave the captain a cold stare, asking if it was smart to leave dispatched cooperation forces of their level unused. Mic drop. The captain was still processing, but managed to stutter out a question, asking if Zeke was really a blue knight. The crowd started murmuring, shocked that there was a blue knight at such a young age, and not just one, but 2 purple knights as well. Plot twist much? The mage captain was absolutely fuming, clearly not happy with the turn of events. He called out Jorge, ordering him to assign the knights patrol missions. Jorge, looking a bit nervous, quickly agreed. Andre, looking confused, asked Zeke what was up with him all of a sudden. He couldn't believe Zeke would provoke the captain for no reason. Zeke mentioned that something about the mission seemed suspicious. Andre, still confused, asked what he meant. Zeke dropped a bombshell, suspecting an alliance between the raid squad and the Black Knight Yaksha. The revelation left Andre shocked and speechless. Andre, trying to compose himself, acknowledged Zeke's suspicions and trusted that he had his reasons for thinking so. He then announced that they would carry out a patrol mission from their location to the Black Knight Yaksha camp and ordered all members to prepare. As for the commander of the squad, Andre had someone specific in mind. He appointed Zeke Draker as the commander, putting him in charge of the mission. With the mission underway, the team prepared to move out under Zeke's command. A lone figure carried a torch, its flickering light barely piercing the dense forest darkness as he ventured deeper into the woods. The trees loomed overhead, casting eerie shadows that danced with every step he took. Suddenly, he halted, his senses tingling with unease. Something wasn't right. He needed to stop and assess the situation carefully. His sharp eyes caught a glimpse of trolls lurking nearby. This was going to be tricky. They had to proceed with utmost caution, making as little noise as possible to avoid detection. A dagger flew through the air, its blade gleaming in the dim light. The tension was palpable as the group tried to remain silent, but the sudden attack made that nearly impossible. A loud scream echoed through the forest, shattering the silence. The figure's attempt at stealth had gone horribly wrong, and now the trolls were sure to hear them. A troll turned its head, its eyes locking onto the source of the noise. With a grunt, it signaled its awareness of the intruders, and the situation quickly escalated from bad to worse. The troll lunged forward, and the group bolted, screaming for their lives like they'd just seen their student loan balance. Not a great moment. They dashed through the chaos, legs moving faster than their brains could process. Survival mode activated. Diego and Asta weren't just running anymore. They turned, slashing at the trolls' necks with the precision of a chef dicing onions. No mercy, just skill. The trolls hit the ground hard, their massive bodies collapsing like a failed Jenga tower. One let out a final, gurgling cry before going down. Just as things seemed to settle, a new figure landed with the grace of a superhero who's done this 1,000 times. Zeke Draker, the main character, wasted no time. He locked eyes with the group and asked if they were the Black Knight Yaksha's patrol team. Without waiting for a full answer, Zeke cut to the chase. He demanded to know where the Black Knight Yaksha was, his tone leaving no room for games. Zeke and Asta stood side by side, gazing down at the imposing castle below. The place looked tough, and Zeke wasn't feeling the usual hype before a big fight. Asta pointed out the obvious: the fortress was built from some seriously sturdy natural stone. Zeke nodded, already calculating the odds. Breaking through wasn't going to be a walk in the park. Zeke turned to Jorge, cutting straight to the point. Where were the mage corps? Because trying to raid this place solo with their current crew? Yeah, that was a hard pass. Jorge hesitated, stumbling over his words. Well, this wasn't inspiring confidence. Turns out, the plan was for them to handle the fortress first, and then the mage corps would roll in with backup fire. Zeke blinked. Pardon? That didn't sound like a plan, it sounded like a suicide mission. Zeke wasn't having it. He shot back. What did Jorge mean? Deal with the fortress with their tiny squad? Did he want them all to end up as castle decor? The whole group froze. Huh? Before Jorge could even stammer out a reply, Diego's eyes suddenly locked onto something in the distance. Diego's voice cracked as he pointed at the sky. There were objects flying straight at them, and they definitely weren't friendly. Zeke whipped around, eyes widening. What in the world was happening now? Zeke's eyes locked onto the shells scattered around. Those were definitely not supposed to be there. What in the world were shells doing in a place like this? Without missing a beat, Zeke sprang into action, barking out orders like a drill sergeant on energy drinks. Everyone needed to scatter as far apart as possible and fast. Suddenly, the world around them erupted into chaos. Explosions rocked the ground, sending debris flying everywhere. Amidst the chaos, Jorge stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock. My goodness, this was not part of the plan. A sudden slap brought Jorge back to reality. Just what was happening? This was not the time to zone out. Zeke grabbed Jorge by the collar, giving him a firm shake. Jorge needed to get it together and fast. Lives were on the line, and this was no time for daydreaming. Zeke's mind raced as he tried to figure out how their location had been compromised. There had to be an internal spy, someone feeding information to the enemy. Just as Zeke's mind was racing with thoughts of a possible spy, his worst fears were confirmed. A horde of armed individuals stormed in, swords drawn and ready for battle. Zeke couldn't help but think that things had just gone from bad to worse. Zeke's eyes widened as he noticed something peculiar about the attackers. There was something off about them, something that didn't quite add up. The scene was chaotic, with the clanging of swords and the shouts of the attackers filling the air. Zeke knew he had to think fast if he wanted to make it out of this alive. The attackers were relentless, their eyes wild and bloodthirsty. They fought with a ferocity that Zeke had never seen before, as if they were driven by something other than mere orders. As Zeke observed the attackers more closely, a realization dawned on him. This wasn't just a regular attack. There was something more sinister at play here, something that made his blood run cold. The pieces of the puzzle started to come together in Zeke's mind. The wild eyes, the relentless attacks, the sheer ferocity, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion: these were no ordinary soldiers. They were soma addicts, driven by their addiction and utterly unpredictable. Zeke's mind raced as he put the pieces together. The wild eyes, the relentless attacks, the sheer ferocity, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion: these were no ordinary soldiers. Soma, the notorious drug being churned out by the Southern Cartel and flooding the central continent. It was spreading like wildfire through the mainland, leaving chaos in its wake. Mages, in their quest for power, used it in controlled amounts for temporary mana boosts. But the real problem? The mercenaries. Living each day like it was their last, they frequently overdosed on Soma, pushing themselves beyond recommended limits. And that made them completely unpredictable. Suddenly, the mercenaries struck, their attacks fierce and unrelenting. These were the Black Knight Yaksha's mercenaries, and they were not holding back. Diego and Asta barely blocked their attacks, their faces etched with shock and exhaustion. These guys were completely off their rockers, and there were just too many of them. Zeke shouted to his comrades, urging them to save their auras. They couldn't overdo it here, not with enemies this unpredictable. The knights alone wouldn't be enough to apprehend the mercenaries in this state. Zeke realized they needed a new plan, and fast. Forget the mission. At this rate, they'd have to sweep the entire fortress. Zeke's mind was racing, trying to come up with a solution. A loud explosion echoed through the fortress. Magic? That could only mean one thing: things were about to get a whole lot worse. The Mage Corps had arrived, and Zeke couldn't help but mutter about their incredible timing. Like, seriously, talk about fashionably late to the party. Chaos erupted as mercenaries scrambled, shouting about the Mage Corps' arrival and ordering everyone to fall back. The panic was real, and the vibe was totally ruined. Zeke observed the scene, noting how the Mage Corps had just shown up but were already flexing some serious magical muscle. If they kept this up, things could get interesting. A single step forward, and the Mage Captain called for a halt. The tension was thick, and everyone froze, wondering what would happen next. Zeke wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. The Mage Captain, though, was having none of it and called him out by name: Zeke Draker. The Mage Captain was furious, claiming that everything had been ruined because of Zeke. The blame game was strong with this one. The Mage Captain's yelling intensified as he demanded to know if Zeke had any idea what he had just done. Spoiler alert: Zeke was just as clueless as everyone else. Zeke could only manage a confused "what?" as the situation spiraled out of control. The mage captain's outburst left everyone wondering what had just gone down. Zeke's expression darkened with frustration, clearly not vibing with how things were going down. The mage captain wasn't done yet, calling out his squad for dropping the ball. They were supposed to keep watch, not stir up more trouble. Classic miscommunication, right? Turning to Andre, the mage captain barked out orders to get the cadets to safety while he handled the fallout with Valhalla. Priorities, am I right? Zeke, though, saw an opening and jumped on it. If their collab with Delphoa was over, did that mean they were finally free from the mage captain's commands? The captain wasn't ready for that plot twist. Zeke dropped the mic, declaring they were going rogue on this mission. No more taking orders, they were doing things their way now. Bold move. The mage captain was fuming. This was Delphoa territory, and Zeke was really pushing it. But Andre stepped in with a reality check. The Black Knight Yaksha was a continental-level threat, which meant Zeke and Andre, as official knights, had the green light to handle things their way. Andre wasn't done. As official knights, they had the authority to act independently and report later. The mage captain wasn't thrilled, but the rules were the rules. Zeke and Andre were playing by them, even if it meant going off script. The tension hung heavy, leaving everyone a little drained. What a way to end a convo. The mage captain stormed off, dropping some serious truth bombs about taking responsibility and doing whatever it takes. No pressure or anything. Jorge stood there, stunned, processing the mic drop moment. The mage corps was leaving, and now he was left wondering how they were supposed to pull off this mission without them. Zeke stepped up, asking Jorge a question with the intensity of someone about to drop a major plot twist. Jorge, still in his feels, just asked what was up. Zeke hit him with the big one. Did Jorge even want to defeat the Black Knight Yaksha? Talk about cutting to the chase. Jorge snapped back, reminding Zeke that they were knights. And what kind of knights would just bail when the enemy was right in front of them? Valid point, Jorge. Zeke took it all in, nodding slowly. He got it now. The pieces were falling into place. Zeke then dropped the line everyone was waiting for. If so, he needed Jorge's help with something. Plot twist incoming. And just like that, the scene shifted to a moonlit castle. The vibes? Immaculate. The stakes? Higher than ever. Two archers stood poised, their arrows nocked and ready. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and the silence was broken only by a sharp intake of breath. Suddenly, the castle was under siege, the once serene night shattered by the sounds of battle. A guttural roar echoed through the air, sending shivers down the spine. Jorge, leading the charge, was not having a good time. He yelled at the top of his lungs, calling out the cowards hiding within the castle walls. His frustration was palpable as he challenged them to come out and face him. In a swift motion, the archers took aim and let their arrows fly. The air was filled with the whistling of arrows and the clatter of armor. Someone couldn't help but scoff at the audacity of the attackers. Jorge's voice cut through the chaos, ordering his troops to maintain formation. He was determined to show their enemies that their attacks were meaningless, their efforts futile. From above, two figures watched the scene unfold. Their expressions were hidden in the shadows, but their attention was riveted on the archers below. One of them smacked his lips in disgust, muttering about the nonsense unfolding before their eyes. The other could only nod in agreement, the taste of blood lingering in his mouth. The protagonist, Zeke Draker, spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes narrowing as he watched the scene below. He couldn't help but think about the uselessness of it all, the futility of the battle raging on. Zeke and his crew stood there, the weight of 335 and 11.3 million pressing down on them. He couldn't help but think about the absurdity of it all. Zeke's gaze sharpened, something catching his attention amidst the chaos. There was some guy just casually riding a horse like he was late for a very important date. Zeke couldn't believe his eyes, questioning what was wrong with him to be heading out on horseback in this situation. With a flicker of his dragon eye, Zeke focused, trying to make sense of the scene unfolding before him. As he suspected, the guy's appearance matched the description of the Black Knight Yaksha. This was no coincidence. Zeke made up his mind, ready to leap into action. He turned to Andre, instructing him to deal with the inside and send a signal flare after opening the main gates. Andre understood, ready to follow the plan. With a deep breath, Zeke prepared himself for the chase ahead. In a flash, Zeke leapt, moving as fast as lightning, his determination propelling him forward. Zeke landed smoothly and demanded his opponent show himself. With a swift motion, Zeke summoned his trusted familiar, Bucephalus, ready for whatever came next. The energy in the air crackled as he prepared to make his move. They moved at lightning speed, literally. Zeke couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline as he thought about finally catching up to that guy. The guy turned around, his eyes wide with shock. He couldn't believe the incredible speed of Zeke and Bucephalus as they closed in on him. Zeke smirked, feeling the thrill of the chase. This was his moment, and he was ready to make it count. With a powerful leap, Zeke soared into the air, his sights set on his target. In a flash, Zeke was above the guy, poised to strike. The tension in the air was palpable as he prepared to deliver the final blow. Just as Zeke was about to strike, a loud blue explosion erupted, disrupting his momentum and lighting up the scene. The guy, quick on his feet, dodged the attack and slid back, creating some distance between them. Zeke's eyes narrowed, clearly not expecting such agility. With a swift motion, the guy drew his sword, ready for a counterattack. Zeke let out a mix of a laugh and a sigh, clearly impressed but also realizing he had to up his game. Zeke's gaze shifted to Yaksha, his tone laced with curiosity and a hint of playful sarcasm as he questioned where Yaksha thought he was going in such a rush this late at night, calling him Black Knight Yaksha. Without wasting another second, Zeke's sword clashed against Yaksha's, the sound of metal ringing through the air like the start of a seriously intense duel. The two were locked in combat, each move swift and calculated, their blades dancing in the dim light as they battled it out. Yaksha paused for a brief moment, his eyes narrowing as he questioned Zeke's origins, clearly confused by his opponent's unfamiliar presence. Zeke, unfazed, shot back with a question of his own, asking if knowing his background would really change anything between them. Yaksha, not one to play fair, suddenly shot a stream of poison at Zeke, his movements swift and unpredictable. The poison hit Zeke, but thanks to his resistance, it was pretty much like getting splashed with water. Zeke barely flinched, recognizing the desert scorpion's poison and shrugging it off like it was nothing. He couldn't help but think how Yaksha really lived up to his outlaw reputation with all these sneaky tricks. Yaksha, looking pretty baffled, wondered aloud why the poison wasn't working and pressed Zeke for answers, guessing if he was from the desert or maybe the southern border. Zeke just smirked, commenting on Yaksha's curious mind, clearly enjoying the mystery. Yaksha, done with the chit-chat, whipped out his throwing knives, clearly meaning business. With a battle cry, he charged at Zeke, knives flashing, ready to end things right there. But Zeke wasn't having it. With a smooth move, he activated his draconian skill, dragon scale armor, deflecting the attack like it was nothing. Yaksha couldn't help but be impressed. This guy was packing some serious skills. Zeke glanced up, spotting something that made his eyes narrow. What was that? Turns out Yaksha had been holding out with a secret weapon in Urablade. Zeke smirked, realizing Yaksha had been playing it cool with his talents. Yaksha wasn't messing around anymore. With a sudden burst of light, he went all out, ready to finish the fight once and for all. The attack hit Zeke hard, and Yaksha thought he had him. Game over, right? Not quite. In a wild twist, Yaksha suddenly found himself getting zapped like, full-on electrocuted. Zeke, still standing, casually dropped the knowledge bomb that Yaksha's sword skills screamed Empire training, specifically from the Intelligence Bureau. Yaksha was left stunned, wondering how Zeke even knew that. Yaksha hit the ground hard, his body convulsing like a malfunctioning robot. Zeke just stood there, totally unfazed, and muttered something about it being his turn to ask the questions. Zeke casually strolled over, sword in hand, and dropped the big question: why? Was an Intelligence Bureau agent causing chaos at Delphoa? Like, what was the endgame here? Yaksha coughed up blood, his body still twitching from the electrocution. He was in rough shape, but his mind was racing, needed a way out and fast. Zeke wasn't having it, though. He pulled some kind of poison out of Yaksha's system like it was no big deal, shaking his head at the futility of it all. Then, in a move that probably shocked Yaksha more than the electrocution, Zeke whipped out a healing potion. He muttered something about knowing how stubborn Imperial intelligence agents could be, but Yaksha was going to talk one way or another. Zeke leaned in, his tone low and serious. If Yaksha wanted to save himself, he'd better start talking and fast. Yaksha's eyes widened, his mind clearly racing. Whatever he'd been expecting, this wasn't it, and now he was trapped. Yaksha's breathing grew heavy, the weight of the situation pressing down on him as he struggled to find his footing. Zeke raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed with the whole situation. Yaksha, trying to regain some composure, shot back, questioning Zeke's sudden curiosity. Zeke's gaze sharpened, his questions cutting straight to the chase. He wanted answers, and he wasn't going to beat around the bush to get them. Yaksha revealed his identity as an agent of the Imperial Intelligence Bureau's 13th unit. Zeke's reaction was priceless. Turns out, he thought there were only 12 units. Yaksha looked taken aback, clearly not expecting Zeke to know that much. But Zeke wasn't having it, was the one calling the shots here. Zeke fixed Yaksha with a death stare, demanding to know what he was doing out here. Yaksha stammered, admitting he was carrying out experiments. Zeke's eyes narrowed as Yaksha mentioned experiments on stimulants. The pieces were starting to come together, and he didn't like the picture it was painting one bit. Yaksha confirmed that the mercenaries were indeed made using soma. Zeke's mind raced. This was bigger than he thought. Zeke pressed further, demanding to know why Yaksha would create such stimulants. Yaksha's answer was Chilingto create warriors who knew no pain or fear. Zeke couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was one of the Empire's human experiments, using the war to test their creations. The reason Yaksha had survived 3 years at the fortress, absorbing bandits and mercenaries, was all because of the Empire's support. Zeke was fuming. What else had the Empire been doing across the continent? Zeke pointed out that the Empire would kill Yaksha first at this rate. Yaksha agreed, asking Zeke to end his life since he had told him everything. Zeke hinted there might be a way out, but Yaksha doubted he could escape the Imperial Intelligence Bureau. Zeke dropped a bombshell, asking what Yaksha would do if the power of Draker could protect him. Yaksha was stunned, questioning what Zeke meant by Draker. The tension in the room was palpable as Zeke prepared to reveal his true power. With a surge of energy, Zeke used his power on Yaksha, leaving him in awe. Yaksha couldn't believe it. Zeke was a pure-blooded awakened of Draker, and he confirmed it with a simple yes. Yaksha was deep in thought. Dying in a place like this was not on his bucket list. He had lost his patriotism doing all the dirty work, and even if he made it back to the Empire alive, they would probably kill him for security reasons. Classic catch-22. The better choice would be to become a witness under Draker protection. But could Zeke guarantee a complete change of identity? Yaksha was skeptical but running out of options. Zeke had a different plan. He suggested there was an even better choice, leaving Yaksha curious and a bit nervous. Zeke proposed introducing Yaksha to a new workplace. Yaksha was taken aback, wondering what kind of workplace Zeke was talking about. Zeke continued, mentioning that if Yaksha was from the Imperial Intelligence Bureau, there were plenty of places that could use his skills. Yaksha was all ears now. Zeke moved swiftly through the moonlit forest, his mind racing. The fortress hadn't been captured yet, but something felt off. A fortress without the Black Knight Yaksha could easily be captured by Andre's group alone. Zeke needed to get into the camp the knights were in to figure out what was going on. Zeke came to a sudden halt, sensing something was off. A loud, eerie sound echoed through the air, making the situation even more suspenseful. Zeke's eyes narrowed as he wondered what the mages were up to, being all alone like that. One of the mages turned around, staff in hand, as if sensing Zeke's gaze. The tension in the air was palpable. Something was definitely about to go down. Zeke was fuming, demanding to know what the mage was doing, especially to an ally. The mage captain, recognizing Zeke, called out his name with a mix of surprise and disdain. Zeke took a step forward, ready to confront the mage captain. The mage captain accused Zeke of being the reason the Black Knight Yaksha had escaped, and the blame game was strong with this one. The mage captain, clearly not happy, ordered Zeke to move to the barracks for what he called a serious mistake. Zeke let out a sarcastic laugh, clearly not impressed by the mage captain's accusations. The mage captain's words clearly struck a nerve, and Zeke's sarcastic laughter faded into a glare of pure fury. Zeke stood before the mages, his voice dripping with disbelief as he demanded to know how losing the Black Knight Yaksha could possibly be his fault. The mage captain scoffed, blaming Zeke's sloppy attack plan for their failure. He fumed, insisting they wouldn't have missed the Black Knight Yaksha if not for Zeke's mistakes. Zeke, with a raised eyebrow, questioned whether the mage captain had personally confirmed the Black Knight Yaksha wasn't in the fortress, pointing out how well fortified their defenses were. The mage captain, flustered, shouted for Zeke to shut up and insisted he had checked earlier. Someone had escaped from the fortress. Zeke countered that the escapee could have been a messenger sent for reinforcements, pressing the mage captain on how he could be certain it was the Black Knight Yaksha. The mage captain, furious and at a loss for words, could only manage a frustrated grunt in response. Zeke, with a smirk, declared his certainty that the escapee was indeed the Black Knight Yaksha, the one who had been communicating with the enemy forces for 3 years. He added that while the traitor might not have known he was aiding the Imperial experiments, it didn't change the fact that he was, well, trash. The mage captain had heard enough and demanded everyone to follow him, insisting he would testify against their crimes to their superiors. Zeke, however, was unfazed and told the mage captain to do as he pleased. They arrived in front of the castle, the grandeur of the place doing little to lighten the mood. Zeke looked around, taking in the sight, his expression unreadable. His gaze landed on Jorge, who was bound with his soldiers. Zeke couldn't help but wonder what had happened to him. Jorge looked beaten, his usual confidence nowhere to be found as he stuttered, trying to address Zeke. Zeke demanded to know what was going on and why Jorge had been arrested. The mage captain, however, was quick to shut him down, accusing Zeke of overstepping. Jorge, despite his predicament, shouted out that he didn't regret identifying as a knight and wished to remain an honorable one. His declaration was abruptly cut short as he was suddenly electrocuted, his body convulsing in pain. Yikes, talk about a shocking interruption. Zeke barely recovered from the shock, but he wasn't done yet. He argued that even prisoners deserved better treatment than this. The mage captain had heard enough, though, and yelled at Zeke to shut up. The mage captain was furious, warning Zeke that one more word would result in immediate execution. Talk about a harsh gag order. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the scene, cutting the tense standoff short. A single step echoed as a new figure arrived. Andre introduced himself as the captain of the Delphoa Mages' 8th Corps. Andre wasn't alone. He arrived with Diego and Asta, and he wasn't happy about the mage captain's threat. He pointed out that threatening to kill Zeke Draker could be seen as a declaration of war. Andre declared that from this point onward, Zeke would be ready to fight alongside Delphoa. The alliance was officially on. Silence fell over the group as the weight of Andre's words settled in. The tension was palpable, but the message was clear: they were all in this together now. Ingrid gulped, the weight of the situation hitting him like a ton of bricks. That warning wasn't just any old heads-up, it was straight from the Draker family, the big leagues. But declaring war on all of Delphoa? That was next-level stuff. Ingrid's eyes widened as he stammered, trying to backpedal. Too extreme, he squeaked, his voice cracking under the pressure. Andre's stern gaze locked onto him, cutting through the panic like a hot knife through butter. Listen up, Ingrid Haxon. Andre's tone left no room for argument. The Draker name wasn't something to be tossed around lightly. It carried weight, history, and power. Andre's words hung in the air, a reminder of the gravity of their situation. Ingrid cleared his throat, trying to regain some composure. He chalked it up to a slip of the tongue, the war making everyone a little on edge. No need to read too much into it, he insisted, though his fidgeting betrayed his nerves. He was just trying to guide Zeke Draker to the barracks for a more thorough investigation. Andre nodded in approval, understanding the intent behind Ingrid's words. Zeke spoke up, asking if he could have a moment to talk to his comrades before they proceeded. The request was reasonable, and the tension in the room eased slightly. Ingrid, however, was still fuming, his face a picture of barely contained frustration. Inside the barracks, Ingrid finally spoke, giving them 20 minutes. It wasn't much, but it was something. Zeke used a buff, ensuring that the surrounding magic equipment wouldn't work on them. The mage captain confirmed the effect, giving them a brief window of privacy. Andre, looking at Zeke, asked what he wanted to talk about. Zeke dropped a bombshell, revealing that he had captured the Black Knight Yaksha, leaving Andre visibly stunned. Andre questioned if Zeke had managed to do it alone. Zeke confirmed that he had indeed caught the Yaksha by himself, having lowered his guard before the battle dragged on. Andre was impressed, acknowledging that Zeke had accomplished something even seasoned knights struggled with, and that this was expected of him. Zeke explained that after interrogating the Yaksha, he discovered his deep involvement with Captain Ingrid, complicating things. Andre asked about his next move. Zeke mused that it might be right to let Delphoa handle its own business. Zeke decided he would do what he could for now and started walking. He passed by guards standing in front of a door. Zeke found a spot and sat down, contemplating his next steps. Zeke settled into his thoughts, expecting someone to arrive soon. A sudden knock on the door interrupted the silence, hinting at the arrival he had been waiting for. Fanon stepped through the doorway, his presence immediately filling the room. Zeke's eyes met Fanon's, acknowledging his arrival with a mix of surprise and anticipation. Fanon questioned what was going on, and Zeke responded that it was the result of his warning. Fanon greeted him with a sense of gravity, setting the tone for the serious conversation ahead. Zeke revealed that Fanon already knew about Captain Ingrid's corruption. Zeke explained that not only Fanon, but most high-level mage officers were aware of the corruption. He added that Delphoa mages needed core experience to rise to higher ranks. Zeke paused, then continued, stating he could only offer the path of severing that experience. He hinted at something important he needed to share. Zeke turned to Fanon and asked if he knew about the Empire's stimulant experiments, his voice filled with urgency. Zeke revealed that he had already told Professor Fanon everything he had discovered about the Black Knight Yaksha, laying the groundwork for what was to come. Now, Fanon had two options to consider. He could either confess the internal corruption he had just discovered or neglect it for his own safety. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Turning to the professor, Zeke addressed him directly, asking if he would be willing to help. Fanon was surprised as Zeke popped the big question: would he help expose this corruption? The moment of truth had arrived, and the tension was real. Ingrid the mage captain strolled through the halls, his subordinates trailing behind like a squad of slightly less intimidating ducklings. Suddenly, Ingrid halted, turning on his heel with the dramatic flair of a man who knew he was about to drop some serious news. His mages exchanged glances, practically vibrating with curiosity as they waited for the tea to be spilled. Ingrid smirked, the kind of smirk that said he was about to serve up some juicy gossip. Professor Fanon had apparently rejected Zeke Draker's offer, and the squad was here for it. Of course, Ingrid added, Fanon's position was way too important for him to be swayed by something as trivial as beliefs. The squad nodded along, soaking in the drama. With a final mic drop moment, Ingrid declared it was time to get started, striding toward the door like a man on a mission. The plan was simple: blow up a few noisy targets, make it look convincing, and then dip out. The squad exchanged glances, silently agreeing that this was about to get lit. The mages readied their spells, fingers twitching with anticipation as they prepared to unleash some magical mayhem. With a unified cry, they let loose a barrage of fire, turning the place into an impromptu fireworks show. Ingrid stood there, thinking he could just blame Jorge for their lack of achievements. But something felt off. The fire attack had no response, which was strange. Ingrid wondered why they weren't firing back as they usually did, even if it was just for show. What were they up to? Suddenly, the doors opened, which was definitely not part of the plan. A single step echoed in the room. Ingrid was shocked, stuttering in confusion as he tried to figure out what was going on. The protagonist, Zeke, stepped forward, calmly asking Ingrid what was wrong. Zeke stood with his crew, a smirk on his face as he asked if Ingrid saw something he liked. In a flashback, Zeke revealed that he had set up a magic scroll to block others from listening in. No one could hear their conversation now. With a sly grin, Zeke simply said, "So?" Zeke couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, questioning if Fanon was truly serious about teaming up with him. Fanon confirmed his commitment, unable to stand by while knowing the truth of the situation. Zeke pointed out that this decision meant Fanon would have to give up on gathering experience at Delphoa. Fanon brushed it off, saying it was better to give up on building a shameful experience anyway. Zeke thanked Fanon, suggesting they should leave. Someone was determined to screw over the captain, no matter what. Fanon was called a useless bastard, accused of betrayal. Ingrid Haxon was mentioned, with someone bringing people to investigate her relationship and secret communications with a continental enemy. The situation was labeled as corruption, adding to the tension. The scene shifted as the command to cooperate with the arrest echoed through the tense atmosphere. Eyes widened as the realization hit: those men were not just any men. With a stutter, the truth spilled out: it was undeniably Delphoa's squad. Panicked protests filled the air, claiming a misunderstanding, denying any communication, and accusing others of framing him. But the evidence was already in hand, and the attempts to act innocent were swiftly shut down. A frustrated groan escaped, the weight of the situation sinking in. In a sudden outburst, threats were hurled, promising that he wouldn't die alone. His connections would ensure others met the same fate. Not just his core, but the entirety of Delphoa. Silence fell, the weight of the words hanging heavy in the air. A nervous chuckle broke the silence, the tension almost palpable. A pained groan escaped as the tension shattered. The warning had been clear, yet defiance lingered in the air, thick and unyielding. The challenge hung heavy, an offer to try and use them as desired. The silence that followed was deafening, pregnant with unspoken consequences. A proud declaration cut through the quiet, boasting of direct lineage from Duke Draker, a pure-blooded awakened and successor to a Black Knight. The weight of heritage pressed down, demanding acknowledgement. A sudden shift, a bet proposed with a smirk. It was time to see who truly had more connections, the stakes rising with each passing second. An apology stumbled out, shaky and uncertain. The admission of wrongdoing hung in the air, raw and exposed. Pleas for forgiveness echoed, desperate and hollow. But forgiveness wasn't theirs to give. Not when the debt was owed to the knights lost because of reckless actions, a harsh reminder of the cost of arrogance. A respectful address slipped out, a whisper of deference in the storm of confrontation. Gratitude was expressed, a twisted thank you for resolving an injustice. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, the resolution coming at a price no one had intended to pay. The aftermath of the investigation left some in the dust, excluded based on a testimony that labeled them unrelated to the incident. But with the 8th Mage Corps vanishing, their Knight Corps was on the chopping block too, a harsh reality setting in. If no other unit stepped up to claim them, the 8th Knights would be dissolved just like that, leaving them in the wind. Regret? Not even a sliver. The decision was made, and standing by it was the only way forward. Jorge stood there, sorrow etched on his face as he apologized for his comrades who had fallen in vain, all because of a captain who had led them astray. But then, a glimmer of hope. Jorge, with a hint of hesitation, offered a new job, a fresh start. The response was a mix of surprise and curiosity. A new job? Really? The protagonist, Zeke, confirmed with a simple yes, his calm demeanor setting the tone for what was to come. Details were handed over, a note that held the promise of a new beginning, the specifics laid out clearly for all to see. Jorge's hands trembled slightly as he looked over the note, disbelief coloring his words. This was too good to be true, wasn't it? The conditions were beyond generous, almost too good to be true. Jorge double-checked the numbers, his voice laced with disbelief. But Zeke just chuckled, assuring him that this was standard when working with him. Zeke explained his recent venture, a merchant group in need of protection. He wanted Jorge and his team to guard it, to be a part of something new. Jorge, still in shock, stammered out his acceptance, ready to embark on this unexpected journey alongside Zeke. Zeke smirked, teasing Jorge with a playful challenge, questioning if he was really up for this new adventure. Jorge and his team cheered, their enthusiasm overflowing as they eagerly pledged their allegiance to Zeke, ready to follow him into this new chapter. Jorge quickly corrected himself, insisting they address Zeke properly as Sir Fanon, their new master. Zeke, now fully embracing his role, instructed them to head to Atlas once their current tasks were completed, hinting at the busy road ahead. Fanon nodded in understanding, accepting his new role with a simple affirmation to his master. Zeke couldn't help but smile, amused by the unexpected twist of fate that turned a professor and student into master and servant. Gazing at the sunset, Zeke reflected on how the mission had taken a wild turn, far from what anyone could have predicted. But he shrugged it off, not letting the uncertainty bother him too much. After all, things had worked out so far, and he was confident they'd figure out the rest as they went along. In Midland, a man expressed gratitude to the main character and another man for showing up despite their busy schedules. They sat in a triangle formation as the man stressed the urgency of discussing the recent incident among the main members of the Order of the Black Knights. Veron Draker, getting straight to the point, took charge of the conversation. He revealed that the southern continent had been acting strangely lately, leaving everyone in shock. One of the men pointed out that even if the South was a criminal playground, it was mostly just drug dealers causing trouble. Another man chimed in, explaining that McCain's Don Juan had taken control of the South through his Soma business, amassing immense wealth and power, which could lead to major chaos. Veron, clearly disappointed, questioned how the squad commander in charge of intelligence could still be unaware of the situation, dropping the bomb that Don Juan was dead. The revelation left everyone in shock, their minds struggling to process the gravity of the news. The shockwave of the revelation still rippling through the room. Someone stammered in disbelief, claiming there was no way this could be happening. Another voice chimed in, pointing out that Don Juan was currently in hiding from Pabella's relentless attacks. Veron stepped in, explaining that after Don Juan went into hiding, the McCain cartel had splintered into many factions. Veron continued, stating that their main opposition, Pabella, had most of their major figures taken out, leaving them in a similar state of disarray. He then posed a question, finding it strange that Don Juan hadn't revealed himself in a situation like this. Suddenly, Veron turned on a recording, revealing that there was a video recorded by the two cartels a month ago. The footage showed masked individuals appearing in both records, their identities concealed behind eerie disguises. Veron explained that they were assuming the person at the front had moved between the two organizations to defeat the cartels. However, neither side had been able to reveal his identity as of yet, leaving everyone in suspense. With a determined look, Veron declared that they were going to find out the truth, no matter what it took. Veron's resolve was unwavering as he vowed to uncover the masked figure's identity and the reason behind his actions against the cartels in the south. They would leave no stone unturned in their quest for the truth. Zeke stood there, eyes wide, totally caught off guard by whatever the Dean just dropped on him. He leaned in like, "Wait, what did you just say, Dean?" And then boom, the Dean hits him with some wild praise about how he crushed it with the Black Knight Yaksha Noisiu. Turns out, Professor Andre had been taking notes like a total nerd, and even the Delphoa inspection department sent over their data with a side of gratitude. Zeke was over here thinking Noisiu Sayo was going to get roasted, especially since you gotta follow orders on the battlefield no matter what. But then, plot twist, actually got praised for it. Like what even? Though there was just one tiny little catch. The Black Knight Yaksha apparently kicked the bucket during the move. Cue the awkward laughter. But honestly, not really feeling the loss. Turns out, the whole death thing was just a cover. The plan was to fake his demise, give him a whole new identity, and sneak him into the Central Konit. Classic spy movie level sneaky stuff. But before diving into the new mission, a quick recap of the intel they had gathered. The Imperial human experiment data found in the south, and the Black Knight Yaksha who witnessed the stimulant experiments. Heavy stuff, but necessary for the bigger picture. Sir Zeke, with his talent shining brighter than a supernova, got a special exam tailored just for him. The professors decided to switch things up, presenting him with a different type of challenge. Zeke wondered what it could be, his curiosity piqued. A demon hunt. The words hung in the air, almost like a joke. A demon hunt? Zeke couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. That seemed almost too easy for a special graduation exam. But of course, it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. This was an unsolved case, and Zeke would have to tackle it solo. No backup, no hints, just his wits and skills against an unknown demon threat. Demons, unlike monsters, didn't fit into neat little boxes. They didn't have specific species or predictable traits, making them a wild card in any encounter. Their customs and behaviors were a mystery, adding layers of complexity to the hunt. And to top it off, some demons were highly intelligent, making them even harder to read and defeat. This wasn't just a test of strength, but a battle of wits against an unpredictable foe. The incident was clearly the work of a highly intelligent demon. The location, the Duchy of Troy no less, and as everyone knows, the Duchy of Troy is where Draker is based. The fact that he still hasn't been found in a place like that just proves he's no ordinary demon. So, if you're exempted from taking the other exams, consider yourself lucky. In other words, passing this exam alone means graduation. On his honor, Sieghart vowed to wrap up the case as quickly as possible. Moreover, he promised not to disappoint.
No capítulo.
Sir Zeke Draker, what an honor it was to finally meet him. The man introduced himself as Felix Valencia, the guide for this mission. Sir Zeke Draker replied that it was nice to meet him too, though he hadn't heard of Felix Valencia in his past or current life. Yikes. And there was one more peculiar detail that needed attention. A strange energy was emanating from within him, which was unusual considering he was just a young knight, not even a Draker. This made him stand out, and it was something worth noting. The question of his origin came up, and it turned out he was a native of Troy. He had trained at a swordsmanship guild in his younger days and was now working with the Atlas Guards. Quite the resume for someone so young. Despite his seemingly normal demeanor, it was wise to stay cautious. You never know what secrets someone might be hiding. He was thanked for the information, and the conversation seemed to wrap up. With that, Zeke was off, making his way towards the Troy Duchy. The journey ahead was filled with anticipation and a sense of purpose. Upon arriving in town, Zeke was greeted with warm welcomes. The people had been expecting him, and the Troy Duchy was ready to receive its guest. It was an honor to have a pure-blooded awakened visit their place. Zeke expressed his pleasure in being of assistance, and the handshakes sealed the mutual respect. Zeke then asked for more details about the incident report, eager to get to the bottom of things. It turned out that the incidents had been going on for several weeks now. The mystery deepened, and Zeke was determined to find out more. The mystery deepened as Zeke dug into the disappearances. It all started with livestock going missing, but then people who went up the mountain never came back. First, it was the children, then the women, followed by the men. It was like whatever was behind this had a dark sense of humor, starting small and leveling up to larger prey over time. Zeke wondered if there were any scenes where traces might still be found. Following a hunch, he decided to check out the farm where the livestock had disappeared. He began walking towards the mountain path, hoping to find some clues. The fence looked fine, but there was blood splattered on it. Zeke decided to look around some more, activating his dragon eye to see if he could pick up anything unusual. With his dragon eye, Zeke scanned the area, hoping to catch something that others might miss. He spotted big footsteps, way bigger than any humans. Whatever left these was heavy and strong. The footsteps were deep, indicating something with significant weight. Plus, it could jump over a fence like it was nothing. Zeke realized this was no ordinary demon he was dealing with. Zeke's face turned serious, realizing that this mission was going to be tougher than he thought. The demon he was up against was no joke, and he needed to bring his A game. Staring into the flickering flames of the campfire, Zeke's mind wandered, replaying the day's events as he tried to piece together the puzzle before him. The weight of exhaustion tugged at him, no surprise really, given how hard he had pushed himself on this investigation, burning the midnight oil and then some. His thoughts drifted back to the grueling climb up the mountain, following the demon's trail, only to end up in the middle of nowhere, a dense forest far from civilization. But then a breakthrough. They had found something, a clue that could turn the tide. A corpse, shriveled up like a mummy, with no visible wounds. This was the work of a demon that could absorb bodily fluids without leaving a trace, a chilling realization that sent a shiver down his spine. If it was the demon he was thinking of, then the footprints discovered in the village weren't its. This case just got a whole lot more complicated. Felix stirred, his voice cutting through the night as he alerted Zeke to a noise. It was coming from 2 kilometers to the west, and Zeke knew he had to check it out. With a swift command to Felix to wait there, Zeke dashed into the night, promising to return before the sun rose. The hunt was on, and failure wasn't an option. Zeke raced through the night, his mind processing the chaos around him. An explosion in a place like this could only mean one thing: trouble, and he was running straight into it. As he rounded the corner, Zeke spotted a man up ahead. His instincts told him this was the right place, but before he could even finish that thought, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the air. The man let out a scream that could wake the dead, and Zeke knew he was in the right place at the absolute worst time. The man was holding a tree like it was a toothpick, and Zeke couldn't help but wonder if he had stumbled into some kind of surreal nightmare. With a grunt, the man swung the tree like it was a sword, and Zeke's eyes widened in disbelief. Zeke's mind raced. What in the world was going on? The man was wielding a tree like it was a sword, and Zeke couldn't help but think that this guy must have skipped leg day a few too many times to compensate with those arms. As Zeke took in the scene, he realized the man was a barbarian, and not just any barbarian. This guy was straight out of a nightmare. And if that wasn't enough, the barbarian was fighting something, and Zeke knew he had to figure out what was going on before he ended up in the middle of it. Zeke's suspicions were confirmed as he pieced together the clues. A Juoin appeared, its presence sending a chill down his spine. Zeke recalled his past life, where he had encountered a mummified corpse, a memory that sent shivers down his spine. His master had warned him about an ancient species demon, urging him to be extra careful. The creature moved swiftly and cautiously, much like a monkey, its movements erratic and unpredictable. But above all, Zeke knew he had to be cautious, his master's warning echoing in his mind. The creature leaped about, attacking the barbarian with swift, calculated movements. Zeke deduced that the barbarian had taken the livestock, while the Juoin had taken the people. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the air, sending a chill down his spine. The Juoin struck with precision, its tongue piercing through the barbarian in a swift and brutal attack. The barbarian, now sweating profusely, let out a garbled cry of pain and surprise. Zeke, positioned behind the creature, readied his weapon for a powerful swing, aiming to strike the Juoin down. But the creature turned swiftly, sensing the impending attack. With a quick motion, it dodged Zeke's strike, narrowly avoiding the blow. The creature wasted no time and bolted away, leaving Zeke in its wake. Zeke couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and annoyance. This thing was ridiculously fast, like trying to swat a fly on caffeine. Zeke glanced at the barbarian, who looked like he had just gone 10 rounds with a dump truck. The guy was barely conscious, groaning in pain. Zeke couldn't help but wonder if this dude had been poisoned by the Juyun. Zeke really didn't want to help the livestock thief, but hey, maybe he could do something kind for once. In a cave with the barbarian laid out, Zeke tried a healing potion. No dice. The potion wasn't working, which made Zeke raise an eyebrow. Was this guy even human? If the barbarian wasn't human, maybe his trusty skill would work. Zeke placed a hand on the barbarian, hoping for the best. Zeke activated his mass buff skill, pouring a ton of healing energy into the barbarian. The cave lit up with a soft glow as Zeke channeled his healing power. Slowly, the barbarian began to stir, his breathing steady and his color returning. Whatever he was, Zeke's healing seemed to be doing the trick. As consciousness returned, the barbarian's eye flickered open, a glint of life breaking through the haze of his injuries. But the dude was not having a chill wake-up. He jolted upright with a series of loud cracks echoing around them, his movements frantic and uncontrolled. Zeke quickly stepped in, trying to calm the suddenly hyperactive barbarian before he hurt himself or worse, someone else. Pointing at himself, Zeke made it clear that he was the reason the barbarian was even alive to begin with, hoping that would snap him out of his frenzy. The barbarian stammered out a shaky thank you, his voice rough but grateful. Zeke let out a small sigh of relief, joking that at least he knew the barbarian language otherwise. This whole rescue op would have been way more awkward. Zeke couldn't help but notice the sheer size of the barbarian's fists. This guy was no ordinary warrior, and it turns out he had a rep to match. Despite being only 16, Big Fists was already stronger than any warrior in his village, which honestly was saying something. But being the strongest in the village came with its own set of problems. For his warrior ceremony, Big Fists was given a nearly impossible task: hunt down and bring back the Juyun, the strongest demon known to the barbarians. No big deal, right? Turns out, tracking the Juyun wasn't just hard, it was a one-way ticket to disaster. Big Fists had chased it all the way to the Troy Duchy, and now he was sweating bullets, convinced he was about to fail his mission. The pressure was real, and he was not having a good time. Zeke, ever the opportunist, saw a chance to make a deal. He offered to help with the hunt, leaving Big Fist stunned. Was this guy for real? Because if so, his luck might have just taken a serious turn for the better. Zeke flashed a smile, exuding confidence as he urged them to just trust him. Felix, still processing the unexpected turn of events, stammered as he tried to address Zeke. Felix couldn't believe it. Wasn't that guy a barbarian? Zeke confirmed it, but also dropped a bombshell to be joining them in the hunt for the demon. Big Fist was left utterly speechless. His subordinate? What was even happening anymore? Zeke pointed out that the barbarian didn't even reach for his sword when he saw him. That kind of restraint wasn't possible without some serious training. Aside from his aura, the guy seemed like a perfectly ordinary swordsman. Zeke wondered if he was overthinking it. Big Fist suddenly sniffed the air, telling Zeke he smelled something. Zeke, confused, asked what smell he was talking about. Big Fist's nostrils flared as he picked up the scent again. It was definitely him, no doubt about it. The smell was unmistakable, like day-old gym socks mixed with a hint of regret. Zeke glanced around, thoroughly confused. Where in the world was that smell coming from? He couldn't pick up anything unusual, but Big Fist's nose was usually right. Zeke's eyes widened as he realized he was standing in front of a cave. Of course, Big Fist had mentioned that Juyun loved dark and humid places. The sun was about to rise, so this seemed like a good spot to wait. Turning to Big Fist, Zeke asked if he had a plan to catch the Juyun. Big Fist nodded, his expression serious. Zeke realized this was why he had been missing out on catching the Juyun all this time. Big Fist explained the strategy. Zeke would beat the prey from the front, and then Big Fist would strike from behind. Zeke nodded, getting the plan. Big Fist nodded, confirming that the plan was locked in and ready to roll. As they ventured deeper into the cave, Zeke couldn't help but notice the eerie vibe. It was clear this place was the creature's den. The walls were covered in all sorts of bones, like a grim trophy collection. Definitely not the coziest spot to hang out. Zeke glanced at Big Fist, ready to face whatever came their way. Suddenly, Juyun launched an attack from behind Big Fist. Zeke shouted a warning, but it was almost too late. Big Fist swiftly dodged the attack, showing off some serious reflexes. Close call, but they were still in the game. Big Fist wasn't playing around anymore. With a roar, he launched a fierce counterattack, his fists a blur of motion. But just as he struck, his opponent vanished into thin air. Big Fist skidded to a halt, eyes wide. Where'd they go? Zeke smirked, totally unfazed. He knew this fight wouldn't be a walk in the park. No way was it going to be that easy. With a sudden burst of speed, he dashed forward, muttering about how even his master in his past life struggled with capturing the Jueyuan. The Jueyuan, now camouflaged, let out a low growl, blending seamlessly into the shadows. Sneaky, sneaky. Then, out of nowhere, it struck. Zeke barely had time to react, letting out a surprised grunt as the attack landed. Zeke wasn't about to go down without a fight. Channeling his powers, he summoned a water field, catching his opponent off guard. The sudden splash left his foe sputtering in surprise, clearly not expecting such a move. Jueyuan stood there, completely shocked, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. The water field had clearly thrown him for a loop, and he wasn't sure how to react. Zeke seized the moment, calling out to his trusted technique, Big Fists. It was now or never, and he was ready to go all in. With a swift move, Zeke grabbed Jueyuan, catching him off guard. The sudden grip left Jueyuan startled, his eyes wide with surprise. Jueyuan wasn't about to give up. With a quick elbow strike, he aimed for Zeke's big fists, letting out a sharp cry. Zeke grunted in pain, but he wasn't about to back down. Jueyuan turned, ready for another round. Zeke, with a determined look, praised his big fists and told Jueyuan to leave the rest to him. It was his time to shine. Zeke then unleashed his earth slice technique, the ground beneath them cracking with intensity. The battle was far from over, and Zeke was just getting started. The creature was literally cut in half, and all it could muster was a weak scream. But plot twist, it wasn't ready to call it quits just yet. With a growl, it tried to pull a fast one and heal itself. Zeke wasn't having it though. He activated his gluttony skill, basically telling the creature, nice try, but not today. He yelled at the creature, asking if it really thought he would just let it regenerate like that. Then, his draconian skill, gluttony, kicked in. Zeke consumed an ancient species corrupted by polluted energy. His stamina, mental power, and mana started filling up. As a bonus, he absorbed the creature's bloodline ability, scoring himself a new active skill, stealth, A rank. He couldn't help but think, a stealth skill? That's actually pretty great. With the battle over, Zeke took a moment to catch his breath. He then turned his attention to someone he called Big Fists, probably not the most creative nickname, but it worked. Zeke tossed something towards Big Fists, calling it proof of hunt. He explained that it was for the same reason he had one of Big Fist's fingers. Classic Zeke, always keeping it real. Big Fist, overcome with gratitude, pulled Zeke into a massive bear hug, laughing with pure joy. Zeke, ever the chill one, just laughed it off like it was no big deal. As Big Fist finally released him and started to leave, he turned back, his voice booming with excitement. He made Zeke promise to visit his village later, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Zeke, curious, asked which tribe he was from. Big Fist puffed out his chest with pride and declared he was from the Boulder tribe. Zeke's eyes widened a bit. Everyone knew that was the most powerful barbarian village around. Big Fist waved one last time, his voice carrying across the distance as he reminded Zeke to visit his village. Like soon. No excuses. Zeke waved back, a small smile on his face. Yeah, he'd visit. Later. When he had time. Maybe. Cut to a cozy pub scene, where the vibe was all warm lighting and clinking glasses. The kind of place where everyone knows your name, or at least the name of the guy who just saved their village. The villagers raised their glasses high, cheering for the knight who had protected their homes. Zeke, ever the humble hero, just smiled and clinked his glass with theirs. The villagers kept thanking him, saying they could finally rest easy because of him. Zeke just shrugged it off, glad he could help but also low-key wondering when the food was going to arrive. As he took a sip of his drink, something felt off. His instincts were tingling, and not in the "oh, this ale is amazing" kind of way. Zeke's instincts were spot on. After handling the Jueyuan and returning to camp, he found Felix missing. When Felix finally showed up, he was a mess, claiming he'd just taken a tumble. But Zeke wasn't buying it. Zeke wondered if Felix had been lurking around, watching his fight with Big Fists. Given how intense the battle was, it wouldn't be surprising if Felix had been nearby, unseen. Deciding to play it cool for now, Zeke figured he'd keep a closer eye on Felix. No need to make a big deal out of it. Yet, after what felt like the longest day ever, Zeke was ready to crash. They'd promised him a decent place to stay, and he was all about that. As he walked, his mind still buzzing from the day's events, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then, out of nowhere, Felix appeared. Zeke stopped in his tracks, his eyes narrowing slightly. What was Felix doing here? Zeke asked Felix what he was doing there, pointing out that his accommodations were in the opposite direction. Felix stammered, clearly caught off guard. Felix, looking nervous, stuttered out a request to become Zeke's follower. The sudden declaration left Zeke taken aback, his eyebrows shooting up in surprise. Zeke was at a loss for words. This was the last thing he expected to hear after such a long day. Just as Zeke was still processing what he had just heard, Felix pulled out something, urging him to take a look at it first. It was a sword, gleaming under the light, ready to be put to use. Felix began to demonstrate his skills with the sword, his movements swift and precise. Zeke watched, realizing there was no doubt about Felix's abilities. Felix was using the swordsmanship passed down among paladins, each move a testament to his training and heritage. Zeke couldn't help but be impressed. Felix continued to demonstrate his swordsmanship in front of Zeke, each movement precise and full of confidence. Felix then declared that this was the moment Zeke had been waiting for. Zeke couldn't help but question how Felix knew the swordsmanship passed down among paladins, given that he had only completed the swordsmanship guild process. Felix stood there, ready to reveal more. Zeke muttered to himself about paladins, their limited contact with the outside world, and their affiliation with the Holy Knights. Zeke acknowledged that the secret swordsmanship was known to very few. Felix chimed in, saying he thought Zeke would recognize it. Felix reached into his pocket, stating there was no point in hiding anything anymore. Felix pulled out a medallion and asked Zeke to take a good look at it. Zeke's eyes widened in surprise as he recognized what it was. Felix revealed that the medallion was an official paladin's insignia, and that his grandfather was a paladin. But his grandfather got caught up in some secret drama within the Holy Kingdom, was framed, and had to leave. Zeke was shocked. This was getting complicated. Felix explained that his grandfather risked his life to expose the corruption in the kingdom and fought against internal enemies. But he couldn't escape the consequences. He was at risk of being executed. With the help of his friends, he barely managed to escape the Holy Kingdom and lived in the Duchy of Troy, hiding his identity. Before passing away, he told Felix everything and taught him his swordsmanship. Zeke wondered if Felix's grandfather had also tried aura transmission before passing away. Felix was confused but complied when Zeke asked him to hold out his hand. Zeke was surprised to find that Felix's aura conductivity was high compared to his abilities. Zeke pondered the implications of this discovery. Zeke realized his aura circuits were completely cleared, leaving him in a state of shock. Felix noticed his unusual reaction and asked if something was wrong. Zeke, however, assured him that everything was fine. Quite the opposite, in fact. Zeke told Felix to be thankful to his late grandfather. Felix, confused, asked what he meant by that. Zeke explained that Felix's grandfather must have been a former Arch Paladin, someone on the level of a Black Knight. Felix was taken aback by this revelation. Zeke continued, mentioning a unique skill taught to the paladins of the Holy Knight since the Imperial Age. That skill was aura transmission, a technique that allowed for faster results with aura. But Felix's grandfather didn't just do that. He also increased Felix's aura conductivity and cleared his circuits. Felix was left speechless, having no idea about his grandfather's abilities. Zeke turned to Felix and asked if he wanted to become his follower to avenge his wronged grandfather. Felix responded that it was indeed part of the reason. But after secretly observing the last mission, he had a change of heart. He thought he truly wanted to serve their side. He regretted his initial hesitation, wishing he had allowed himself to join sooner. He considered that if the newcomer was a normal spy, he could keep him close to uncover his enemies. And if not, he could gain a powerful ally with great potential. Win-win, right? He warned that following him wouldn't be easy. They were set to return to Atlas tomorrow, so he advised to get ready. With gratitude, he thanked Sir Zeke, promising to do his best. No pressure, though. Sir Zeke laughed, clearly pleased with the enthusiasm. He praised the incredible reports he had received, especially the part about healing a hurt barbarian and teaming up to defeat the beast. Talk about a power move. The Dean wasn't playing around. Keeping a talent like that at Valhalla was the move of the century. But of course, our hero over here was all about that humble life, chalking it up to just luck. The Dean couldn't help but chuckle at the modesty, and then dropped the big one. He had something important. Turns out it was a temporary graduation certificate. The semester wasn't over yet, but with this, our hero could skip the line and do whatever they set their mind to. Gratitude was the name of the game, and our hero thanked the dean, certificate in hand. The dean then hit them with the big question, what's next? Draker, maybe? But our hero had other plans. They wanted to stack up some experience as a knight of the family first. The dean was all about it, and told them he'd be waiting for their growth in the future. Talk about a hype man. But then, plot twist. Someone else showed up, and everyone was like, who even is that? The mystery person apologized for the interruption. Rude, but okay. Turns out, the Four Seasons Fortress had sent them to take Zeke to the fortress. So, not a random stranger, just a delivery person. The patriarch already knew about Zeke's graduation, and it seemed like the news had spread fast. With a polite nod, the messenger took his leave, telling Zeke to come visit often. Curious, Zeke wondered why the patriarch had asked for him specifically. The messenger wasn't sure either, guessing it was just a simple congratulations on graduating. Zeke found it hard to imagine the patriarch he knew giving a warm congratulations. I mean, graduating Valhalla in 2 years was a big deal, so maybe that was it. The messenger mentioned seeing Zeke's friends on the way to the dean's office. Friends? Zeke wasn't sure he had any. Turns out they looked pretty down. Apparently, they'd been stuck doing refurbishment work at the northern border. Snow was scarier than monsters, after all. Zeke tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but it fell flat. Typical. With a nod from the professor, Zeke headed into the dean's office, ready to face whatever came next. Zeke pushed open the door, stepping into the dean's office with a mix of anticipation and curiosity. A voice greeted him almost immediately, catching him slightly off guard. The patriarch congratulated Zeke on his graduation, the pride in his voice evident even without seeing his face. Zeke thanked the patriarch and was promptly invited to take a seat, the patriarch's tone warm and welcoming. As Zeke settled into the chair, the patriarch began to speak, hinting at something big. The patriarch revealed his plans to send Zeke to the upcoming Draker martial arts competition, the weight of the opportunity hanging in the air. Setting his cup down with a gentle clink, the patriarch added that he hoped Zeke would bring home a victory, the challenge clear in his eyes. Zeke's expression shifted, determination etching itself onto his features as he absorbed the patriarch's words. The Draker family was hosting a martial arts competition, a major event where young knights who had reached the rank of Purple Knight in the last 5 years could show off their skills. The patriarch and the main character, Zeke Draker, sat together as the patriarch explained the competition's purpose. It was all about finding out which new rookies would lead the continent. No pressure or anything, right? Zeke listened intently and simply replied that he understood. The patriarch, raising an eyebrow, asked if Zeke was saying he would win. With a confident look, Zeke affirmed that he would indeed win the Draker martial arts competition. Talk about setting the bar high. The patriarch nodded approvingly, hoping he could award Zeke the medal on the last day of the competition. Someone's aiming for the top spot. As a token of his confidence, the patriarch set a gift on the table for Zeke, calling it a graduation gift. Wonder what's inside? Zeke opened the gift as instructed by the patriarch. Inside was a title certificate for a territory. Looks like the patriarch was already planning for Zeke's victory. Talk about having high expectations. Zeke was left stunned. A territory? Really? Was the patriarch actually giving him a whole territory? The patriarch confirmed it. The territory was indeed his, located north of the Duchy of Troy, where Zeke had recently caught that beast. Zeke was blown away. A territory as a graduation present? Talk about a major upgrade. He vowed to work hard and meet the patriarch's sky-high expectations. The patriarch stood up, reminding Zeke that he expected much from him. He added that a caretaker would be assigned to manage the territory, so Zeke could hear the details later. With that, Zeke was dismissed. The patriarch told him he could take his leave now. Zeke left, thanking the patriarch for his consideration. As he walked away, he couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and pressure. He thought about how even as a Draker, he still needed to become a high-level knight to receive a territory. But he had just become an official knight, so this news was quite shocking. Just as he was lost in thought, someone grabbed his attention, calling out his name. Zeke snapped out of his thoughts as a familiar voice called out to him. There stood Duke, his old companion, greeting him with that same old sarcastic charm. Clearly, some things never change. Zeke raised an eyebrow, questioning Duke's sudden appearance. Duke, with a shrug, explained he was just trying to catch a break, but got roped back into work by Arthur. Typical. Zeke couldn't help but tease Duke about his decade-long nap. Duke, unfazed, shot back that he sounded just like his father. Ouch, low blow. Before Zeke could retort, Duke casually strolled over to the window and swung it open. Zeke barely had time to react before Duke was already making his exit. Duke called out for Zeke to hurry up before they got caught by the leeches. Zeke just sighed, knowing exactly what kind of chaos Duke was bringing with him. Back at the mansion, with the sunset painting the sky, Zeke finally let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Maybe now he could actually relax. Duke, ever the dramatic one, asked if being back home felt as good as it seemed. Zeke just rolled his eyes and reminded him whose home it actually was. Duke, with a smirk, declared that since he was Zeke's master, everything Zeke had was his too. Zeke just sat there, probably wondering why he even bothered. Duke, still smirking, wondered out loud why Arthur had called for Zeke. Maybe to congratulate him on graduating, he mused, as if he already knew the answer. Zeke mentioned he had already received his graduation present. Duke, now curious, leaned in and asked what it was. A sword? Armor? Something cool, hopefully. Zeke casually dropped the bomb that he had received a territory. Duke started to say that a territory was good for something, but then he paused, processing what Zeke had just said. Duke jumped up, shocked, and asked what Zeke had received again. Zeke repeated that he got a territory north of the Troy Duchy. Duke was clearly not expecting that. Duke was left speechless, just standing there with his mouth open. The territory was a big deal, and Zeke had just casually mentioned it like it was no biggie. Duke finally composed himself and noted that receiving a territory at Zeke's age was impressive. The Troy Duchy might be up north, but the tax revenue wasn't bad at all. Arthur must be really happy with Zeke. Zeke explained that his mission just happened to be there, and the people were all good to him. Duke agreed that this was good for Zeke. Being a lord of a territory was way better than just having a knight title. Zeke then added that there was one more thing. Duke, now really intrigued, asked if Zeke got another present. The anticipation was killing him. Zeke dropped another bombshell, saying that Arthur told him to win the Draker martial arts competition. Duke's smile faded a bit, realizing that Zeke was being set up for some serious challenges. Duke brought up the Draker martial arts competition, and Zeke couldn't help but wonder what was up with that. Was the competition really that tough? Duke reassured Zeke that with his talent, it wouldn't be difficult. Well, at least if it was just about talent. Zeke was confused. What did Duke mean by that? Duke asked Zeke if he had ever watched the Draker martial arts competition before. Zeke just knew it happened once every 5 years. Duke repeated that the competition wasn't a simple one. Zeke started to get a bad feeling about this. Duke explained that it was a battle of families disguised under the title of a competition. Zeke asked if there was corruption happening underneath. Duke clarified that it wasn't just corruption, it was a place where all sorts of power plays were allowed, and the winner was decided with all of that included. Yikes, talk about a family feud. Zeke thought he just had to win, but seeing Duke's expression, he realized it was more serious than he thought. Duke decided to speak frankly with Zeke. This was getting real. Duke dropped the final bombshell without a sponsor family. Zeke could never win the Draker martial arts competition. Looks like Zeke needed more than just skills to win this one. Zeke took a moment to let Duke's words sink in, feeling the weight of the situation. Duke admitted that even he was distant from politics, but suggested they start looking for sponsor families. Zeke sighed, confessing he wasn't well-versed in that area either. Politics, ugh, the necessary evil. Just then, Decker walked in, interrupting their conversation. Zeke groaned, wondering if there was any other way to compete. Decker politely excused himself, making Zeke do a double take. Decker bowed respectfully, catching Zeke's attention. Zeke asked what was on his mind, and Decker mentioned he had something important to say. Decker revealed he had overheard their conversation about the competition and the need for a sponsor family. Zeke confirmed, feeling a bit frustrated about the whole situation. Decker seemed to have something more to add, leaving Zeke curious about what he was up to. Suddenly, Decker unsheathed his sword, telling Zeke to take a good look. Plot twist alert, maybe Decker was about to drop some serious wisdom or a game-changing idea. As the sword was drawn, a radiant blue aura glowed around it, hinting at something far greater than Zeke had anticipated. Zeke's eyes widened in disbelief. Decker, a blue knight? His mind was officially blown. Decker raised his sword, a knowing look in his eyes. Zeke was already piecing it together, and Decker could see it. Zeke muttered under his breath, impressed by how quickly Decker was revealing the truth. Decker began to explain, his voice steady and sure. He had once been a knight in the Draker family, and there was more to the story. He revealed that he was the guard who protected Zeke's mother. Zeke's shock deepened. His mother? This was getting heavy. Decker asked Zeke if he knew why no one ever spoke about her. Zeke could only muster a quiet why, his mind racing with questions. With a serious look, Decker dropped the bombshell. Zeke's mother was from the Agamemnon family. Mic drop moment. Zeke's eyes widened like he just heard the most random plot twist ever. The Agamemnon family? Never heard of them. But apparently they were a big deal. Decker dropped some knowledge bombs. The Agamemnon family used to be the top dogs among the Drakers. Like even more powerful than the Turin or Zimmons families. Mind blown. The emblems of the Turin and Zimmons families flashed, putting their power into perspective. But the Agamemnon family? They were on a whole other level. Zeke's brain was short-circuiting. That powerful? Then why was he only hearing about them now? Plot hole much? Decker spilled the tea. Everyone avoided them like the plague, calling them a cursed family. Zeke's curiosity was piqued. What kind of curse could they possibly have? The suspense was killing him. Decker dropped a heavy truth bomb. In that family, pregnant women would give birth to stillborn children, and even the few that were born would all die before reaching the age of 5. But plot twist. Zeke's mom was the ultimate survivor, making it to adulthood. Zeke was shook. Decker 113L, what even? Zeke was like, wait, so you're saying he should ask that cursed family for support? Decker nodded, saying they were once the greatest power in the central region. Plus, Zeke had the qualifications to be their sole heir. Zeke took a moment, then dropped an alright, he'd consider it. Decker was just glad he was listening. Decker looked up and called him young master. Zeke was confused but intrigued. Decker got all sentimental, thanking Zeke for trusting him even when he knew he was a blue knight. Zeke just smiled and told him not to mention it. No biggie, right? Zeke and Felix strolled into town. The place was bustling with people going about their day. A sign proudly declared the name of this lively place, Mykean. Felix was immediately starstruck, exclaiming how it felt like they had stepped right into the era of the Holy Kingdom. Zeke couldn't help but chuckle at his enthusiasm. Felix's eyes widened as he took in the sights, declaring that this was Mykean. Zeke nodded in agreement, adding that it was definitely better seeing it in person. Zeke explained that Mykean was one of the cities in Midland that Draker supported. He went on to say that according to Decker, the Agamemnon family were nobles who had ruled Mykean and its surrounding territories for a long time. But around 50 years ago, unfortunate events began happening to the family. As rumors spread about them being cursed, they became ostracized. That was probably why their name became hard to find even within Draker. Zeke decided it was time for a break and suggested they find something to eat. Felix, always eager, quickly agreed. They approached an inn. The door creaked open, inviting them in. Zeke led the way, stepping inside the cozy inn, ready to enjoy a well-deserved meal. Zeke wasted no time and immediately called out to the innkeeper, demanding their best dish. The innkeeper laughed heartily and promised to serve up the restaurant's special soup, setting the tone for a warm welcome. As Zeke settled in, he took a moment to observe his surroundings. The people seemed relaxed and public safety looked solid. It was a peaceful vibe and he couldn't help but feel a bit more at ease. Glancing around, Zeke noted that the city seemed to be in good shape. The streets were clean, and the buildings were well maintained. It was a far cry from some of the rougher places he had visited. A group of locals approached Zeke and Felix, asking if they were travelers. They enthusiastically offered to treat them to some grilled short ribs, insisting that it was a must-try dish in Mykean. The hospitality was overwhelming, and Zeke couldn't help but smile. Zeke thanked them, genuinely touched by the kindness of the people of Mykean. It was a nice change of pace from the usual reception he got in other towns. Feeling generous, Zeke ordered a beer for each of the locals, wanting to show his appreciation for their warm welcome. The innkeeper quickly obliged, promising to bring the drinks right away. One of the locals tried to decline, saying it wasn't necessary, but Zeke insisted. He wanted to show his gratitude for their hospitality and kindness. Curious about the town, Zeke asked if they had all lived there for long. One of the locals proudly declared himself a native of Mykean and offered to answer any questions they had. Zeke then asked about the mayor of the place, noting that he hadn't seen a city hall building earlier. The locals seemed a bit taken aback by the question, as if it was something they hadn't considered before. As Zeke dropped the name Agamemnon, the whole inn went silent. The vibe shifted so fast, it was like someone hit the mute button on the entire room. A guy suddenly got up, looking flustered. He muttered something about being too nosy, then quickly added that the beer was fine and hoped Zeke would have a pleasant stay. Zeke couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere turned icy the moment he mentioned the Agamemnon family. It was like he'd just brought up the ultimate party poopers. Deciding to check out the area, Zeke got up and told Felix to rest there. Felix, being the good companion he was, simply agreed. With that, Zeke left the inn, ready to explore the mysterious town. The bartender watched Zeke with a keen eye, as if sizing him up. As Zeke walked up to the bartender, the man asked who he was and warned that this wasn't a place for a kid to be. Zeke reached into his pocket, pulling something out that made him raise an eyebrow. He revealed a VIP card, wondering how the bartender would react to seeing it. The bartender's eyes nearly popped out of his head, clearly stunned by the sight of the VIP card. The bartender started freaking out, stuttering apologies for not recognizing someone of such high stature. Zeke calmly asked to be taken to the branch manager. The bartender, now sweating bullets, agreed immediately and began leading the way. Zeke mused that the card must hold serious weight within the syndicate, especially since it was given to him by Kay. As they walked, Zeke thought about how useful this card might be in the future. Suddenly, a person came running towards them. The guy dropped to his knees in front of Zeke, begging for forgiveness and rambling about not knowing someone of his stature had arrived. Zeke asked if he knew who he was, but the guy admitted he didn't know the details. He just knew better than to be disrespectful. Zeke then asked how long he had been in Mykin. The guy, still bowing with his face practically glued to the ground, replied that it had been about 20 years. Zeke couldn't help but think, "Oh, that's a long time." Zeke thought to himself that was a long time, but he was also well aware of the situation in Mykin. The place was more active than it seemed, and he was about to find out just how much. The guy looked up at Zeke, trying to gauge his interest in the underworld. But Zeke quickly shut that down, saying he wasn't interested in stolen goods. Instead, he asked about the Lord of Mykin. The guy got visibly frightened at the mention of the Lord of Mykin, his eyes widening and his body trembling slightly. The guy's arm trembled as he stuttered, trying to form a sentence. Zeke, noticing his fear, asked if he was really that afraid because he didn't know. The guy's trembling intensified as Zeke mentioned the Agamemnon family, clearly struck by fear at the mere mention of the name. Zeke couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, wondering what kind of rumors had spread to make everyone this afraid. It seemed like mentioning the Agamemnon family's name was taboo itself in Mykin. Zeke couldn't help but ask if there was a reason for that. The guy, sweating a lot, explained that the family was cursed. Zeke already knew that much, that it was a curse where children who were born died. Zeke confirmed that he knew about the curse, but the guy stuttered, saying that was not all. Zeke, now even more curious, asked what kind of curse it was, ready to uncover the dark secrets of the Agamemnon family. The guy spilled the tea, literally shaking as he dropped the bombshell. Anyone who so much as steps into the Agamemnon family's castle is basically signing their own death warrant. Zeke's face? Priceless. Shock doesn't even begin to cover it. He was not expecting that plot twist. Zeke, still processing the bombshell, leaned in and asked the guy to confirm the wild claim. So, anyone who steps into the Agamemnon family's castle is basically signing their own death warrant? The guy, still bowing, nervously confirmed it. Not only that, but even those who say the name Agamemnon often find themselves in danger. The plot thickens. Zeke's mind raced with the new information. There must be something to this curse. The more people believe in it, the stronger it gets, making it more likely that such a thing exists. Classic self-fulfilling prophecy. Zeke couldn't help but ask again, do people really die after going to that place? The guy confirmed it once more, adding that it's not just a rumor. Countless years ago, there was a famous story about those who visited the castle and eventually died. That's why the Mykins don't even go near it. The curse is real and it's terrifying. Zeke finally connected the dots. He gets it now. The curse is a deliberate creation by the Agamemnon family. Mind officially blown. Zeke realized that the curse is not just some ancient legend, but a calculated move by the Agamemnon family to keep people away. As night fell and crows flew overhead, Zeke and Felix stood in front of the ominous castle. Felix, looking nervous, asked if Zeke was really going to investigate this place. Zeke, with a determined look, acknowledged that it indeed looked almost ominous. Zeke hesitated, suggesting that maybe they should head back. The castle's eerie vibe was giving him second thoughts. But then, Zeke remembered who he was. A pure-blooded awakened of the Draker family and the youngest Blue Knight in the game. He wasn't about to back down now. With a deep breath, he shouted out his purpose. He was Zeke Draker, and he had come to find the Agamemnon family. The heavy wooden door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit entrance. Someone was expecting them. An old lady maid stood at the door, her eyes widening in surprise. She couldn't believe her ears. Had he just said Sir Zeke Draker? Zeke nodded, confirming her suspicions. He was indeed the patriarch of the Agamemnon family, or at least that's what he claimed. The old lady let out a nervous chuckle, telling them they had come to the right place. It seemed like their luck was turning around. With a welcoming gesture, she opened the door wider, inviting them in. Their journey into the unknown was about to begin. As they stepped inside, Zeke couldn't help but marvel at the castle's ancient architecture. This place was super old, like 1,000 years old at least. He wondered what secrets these walls held. Felix suddenly got spooked, letting out a yelp. He frantically called out to his master, his voice trembling with fear. Felix's eyes widened as he pointed towards a group of white-haired individuals seated around a table. They looked ancient, like they'd been sitting there since forever. Felix's panic escalated as he mistook the old people for ghosts, and not just one, but a whole bunch of them. His imagination was really running wild now. Zeke, trying to keep things chill, smacked Felix to calm him down. He needed Felix to stay quiet and not blow their cover. Zeke scanned the room and figured the old man in the middle had to be the patriarch. He seemed to be the big boss of this ghostly crew. Zeke stepped forward, addressing the group with respect. He greeted the masters of Mycene and the elders of the Agamemnon family, trying to keep things formal and not freak out like Felix. Zeke took a deep breath and dropped the bomb was here to ask for their sponsorship as the direct bloodline of the Agamemnon family. Talk about a plot twist. The old man slowly got up from his seat, the room suddenly feeling a lot smaller. He took a step forward, the tension in the room cranking up to 11. Then he looked up, his gaze locking onto something or someone beyond the crowd. Zeke suddenly switched gears, pointing out a painting on the wall and telling Felix to shine some light on it. Felix, ever the eager sidekick, complied without hesitation. The paintings came into view, and Felix's reaction was priceless, pure shock and confusion. Felix couldn't even form words, his mind clearly blown by whatever he was seeing. Zeke noticed the patriarch staring intently at two particular paintings, and he couldn't help but wonder why they looked so disturbing. One painting showed people coughing up blood, and it was not a pretty sight. The other depicted corpses being thrown into a lake, which was even more unsettling. Definitely not your typical family portraits. The old man began to speak, his voice carrying the weight of something important, something about a symbol of the family. Suddenly, the old man's tone shifted, his voice rising as he declared that the symbol of the family no longer existed. He went on to say that a curse would befall them, that no one had the right to succession, and that everyone would meet their end in that place. Zeke, the protagonist, processed the old man's words and asked if he was implying that the right to become the heir had vanished because the symbol had disappeared. Felix stood there, stunned. He couldn't help but wonder how Zeke had come to that conclusion from what the old man had said. Zeke continued, piecing together the clues. A symbol of the family and a lake. It seemed like the start of a dark mystery. He couldn't help but ask the question that was on his mind. Did the symbol of the family sink below the lake? Zeke, determined to find the truth, asked to be guided to the lake. The plot was thickening, and he was ready to dive in, literally. The scene shifted to a moonlit lake, its surface shimmering under the night sky. It was time to find out what secrets lay beneath. Felix, looking at the lake, couldn't hide his amazement. He had never seen a lake this big before, and the fact that it was murky only added to the challenge. Finding anything in there would surely be a tough task. Zeke recalled the painting, showing someone diving into the lake with something in hand. It was his only clue, and he knew what he had to do. He purchased whale's breath, an item that would let him breathe underwater. With a determined look, he decided to head into the lake himself. Whale's breath in hand, Zeke examined it, realizing this was his ticket to explore the murky depths of the lake. Without hesitation, Zeke used the whale's breath, ready to embark on his underwater adventure. Zeke informed Felix that he was going into the lake for a bit and it might take a while, so Felix should wait there. Felix, looking confused, could only muster a puzzled pardon. Before Felix could say anything else, Zeke dove straight into the lake, leaving Felix calling out for him to wait. Underwater, Zeke found himself in a whole new world. The murky lake was now his domain, thanks to the whale's breath. As he ventured deeper, something caught his eye. There, in the depths, was something he recognized from the painting. Zeke couldn't believe his eyes. A massive graveyard of skeletal remains lay before him, just like in the painting. His mind raced, questioning if the events depicted had truly unfolded. But something else caught his attention, a faint light glimmering in the distance. As he approached, the light revealed a mysterious mask, seemingly waiting to be discovered. Zeke reached out and grabbed the mask. It was ornate, golden, and adorned with a crest that bore a striking resemblance to the Holy Kingdom's insignia. Talk about a plot twist. Suddenly, a strange buzzing sensation filled the air, sending a chill down Zeke's spine. What was going on? Before he could process the sensation, a fin emerged from the depths, causing Zeke's heart to skip a beat. This was getting intense. Out of nowhere, an ancient underwater dragon, eroded by polluted energy, charged at Zeke. Well, this just went from 0 to 100 real quick. Zeke barely had time to process the sight before him. An ancient dragon, seriously? Out of nowhere? This was not on his bingo card for the day. Zeke cursed his luck. There was no helping it now. He had to face this ancient beast head-on. With a swift motion, Zeke summoned his water-field sword. The blade shimmered, ready for action. The sword sliced through the air, creating a wave of water that surged towards the dragon. The dragon let out a deafening scream, echoing through the battlefield. This fight was about to get real. Zeke felt the dragon's pressure bearing down on him, like the weight of an ocean pressing against his every move. Fighting under these conditions seemed nearly impossible, and he couldn't help but feel the odds were stacked against him. But then, a flicker of determination crossed his mind. He had faced worse, hadn't he? This wasn't the time to back down. With a quick thought, his magic armor materialized around him, shimmering with protective energy. It was now or never. Zeke steadied himself, taking a deep breath. He was ready to make his move. Channeling his energy, he prepared to unleash a powerful technique, one that had been passed down through generations. Dragon-slaying arts, Chapter 8, Verse 1. The dragon, sensing the shift in energy, let out a low, rumbling growl, bracing itself for whatever was coming next. But Zeke wasn't done yet. With a sudden realization, he activated his innate authority, a power that allowed him to control dragons. He couldn't believe it. This ability was working on the dragon, and he might just be able to turn the tide of this battle. With a smirk, he thought to himself that 773 million reasons to try were better than none. It was time to submit the dragon to his will. Golden chains began to form out of thin air, shimmering with an eerie glow as they materialized around the dragon. The chains coiled around the dragon, binding it tightly. The creature struggled, but the chains held firm, their golden hue contrasting sharply against the dragon's dark scales. Suddenly, a blinding light emitted from the dragon, causing Zeke to shield his eyes. He couldn't help but mutter his confusion, utterly baffled by the unexpected turn of events. The light intensified, growing into a huge radiance that filled the entire space, casting long shadows and illuminating every corner. As the light faded, the dragon appeared purified, its once menacing form now radiating a divine aura. The polluted energy that had eroded the ancient dragon was gone, restoring its past divinity. Zeke couldn't believe his eyes. The dragon that seemed like a monster before now seemed auspicious, almost majestic. The dragon let out a soft, rumbling sound, almost like a purr, as if it was happy to see Zeke. Suddenly, a prompt appeared asking if he would like to name the submitted dragon. Zeke pondered for a moment, recalling the minimap. If he remembered correctly, the lake's name was Noel. With a smile, Zeke decided to name the dragon Noel. The dragon responded with another cheerful purr, as if it approved of the name. Zeke looked at the system interface, a bit surprised by what he saw. Noel's stats were impressive, and there was even an option for the dragon to develop into a divine beast. Zeke couldn't help but be intrigued. He wasn't sure what the conditions were for such a development, but he was determined to figure it out over time. Noel cheered, as if it was excited about the prospect. Zeke made up his mind. He would get along with Noel and see where this journey would take them. Meanwhile, Felix was waiting by the lake, wondering what was taking Zeke so long. Felix started to get worried. It had been quite some time since Zeke had gone into the lake. He couldn't help but wonder if Zeke was okay. The murky water of the lake didn't help ease his mind either. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the lake, making Felix jump back in disgust. Before Felix could react, a splash of water hit him, sending him tumbling to the ground. Zeke emerged from the lake, apologizing for making Felix wait. Felix looked up in shock, asking what that creature was that Zeke had brought with him. Zeke explained that it was a monster from the lake, but the curse had transformed it into its current form. Felix, still in shock, could only manage to utter that he understood. Zeke then turned his attention to the strange artifact in his hand, wondering what it could be. Upon closer inspection, Zeke noticed a sun crest on the artifact. It looked eerily similar to the Holy Kingdom's insignia, leaving him puzzled. Zeke considered putting some ether into the artifact, just like he did with the Terracan relic. Suddenly, an alert popped up, announcing that he had acquired a mysterious mask. Zeke raised an eyebrow, noticing that the name was hidden, much like when he first got his magic armor. After investigating the magic armor, Zeke deduced that it was made in the Golden Age at least. This mask, with its similar properties, might also be a relic from that time. A prompt appeared, asking if he would like to be registered as the mask's user. Zeke didn't hesitate and chose to register. The system confirmed that he had been registered as the mask's user and asked if he would like to activate the mask's function. Curious, Zeke decided to activate it. The mask lit up, and the system announced that its function had been activated. Zeke was now ready to uncover the secrets of this ancient artifact. Zeke barely had time to process the situation before the system chimed in again, announcing that the mask's function had been connected to some intermediate-level admin system. It confirmed his class as immortal, and Zeke couldn't help but wonder if this meant he had a unique skill. Like seriously, what were the odds? Suddenly, the mask started glowing with a golden aura, and the system declared it was increasing the scope of something called Great Purification. Zeke watched, mesmerized, as the energy began to build. The energy leaped from the mask, and the system announced it was beginning the purification of the polluted mana throughout the land. Zeke could feel the power radiating from the artifact, and he knew something big was about to happen. With a sudden surge, the energy shot up into the sky, illuminating the surrounding area. Zeke shielded his eyes, but he couldn't look away. This was getting intense. The light spread outwards, and the system declared it was connecting with some unknown admin system. Zeke could only watch in awe as the energy continued to grow and change. The light seemed to be purifying everything it touched, and the system announced it was converting some unknown mode. Zeke was starting to feel like he was in the middle of a sci-fi movie, but he couldn't deny the thrill of it all. Finally, the system declared it was lifting emergency defense mode. The light continued to purify the land, and Zeke could only imagine what this meant for the world. He was ready to find out. As the light faded, the skies cleared, revealing a breathtaking view that seemed to stretch on forever. It was a whole new world out there, and Zeke was ready to dive in. But before he could even take it all in, Felix was already freaking out, grabbing Zeke's attention with a sense of urgency. Suddenly, an old man came out of nowhere, shouting about some prophecy like he'd just won the lottery. Dramatic much? Zeke and Felix turned around, shocked to see the old man wasn't alone. He had a whole crew with him, riding in on horses like they were in some fantasy movie. Felix immediately went on high alert, hand on his sword, ready to defend against these mysterious strangers. He wasn't about to take any chances. Zeke, though, was way more chill about it. He told Felix to relax, these guys weren't enemies. Felix was not convinced, his confusion was evident. Felix was still skeptical, asking Zeke who these people even were. Zeke casually mentioned they'd already met them earlier, like it was no big deal. Felix's mind was blown. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. If they'd met before, then what did that mean for them now? Felix's eyes widened as he processed the wild revelation. The old man before him, looking like he just stepped out of a classic horror flick, made Felix connect the dots. Those people, the ones he couldn't shake off, were they really the ghosts from earlier? His mind was officially fried. As Felix stood there, mind still reeling, the old man dismounted his horse with the kind of dramatic flair that would make any action hero proud. The old man strode toward Felix, his voice booming like a trailer narrator as he declared that the prophecy had come true. Felix blinked, trying to process the old man's words. A child with black eyes had returned the family to normal. Okay, so maybe he wasn't just some random guy with a cool eye color. Felix stood there, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief, like someone who just found out their entire life was a reality show. The crowd behind the old man started shouting, their voices echoing like a hype squad at a sports event. A child of black eyes, the savior of the family. Felix felt like he had just been announced as the winner of a contest he didn't even know he entered. Felix's mind raced. He had been so sure those people were ghosts. But now, it seemed their conditions had simply become sickly due to the curse. Like a really bad filter had been lifted. The old man stepped closer, his voice filled with emotion as he said Zeke Draker's name. Since the curse had been released, they had returned to their original forms. Felix was starting to feel like the main character in a fantasy novel he never read. The old man continued, his voice filled with pride and relief. His grandchild, with his black eyes, had the family curse and had saved them. Felix felt a surge of emotion, like when you finally beat the last level of a really hard video game. Felix smiled, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. Yes, grandfather, he thought, feeling like he had just been given the keys to the family kingdom. With a salute, Felix greeted his grandfather, relief and joy evident in his voice. It was a relief that he could greet him like this again, like a long-awaited family reunion. Back at the castle, the scene had shifted dramatically, leaving Felix in awe of the transformation. Felix stood dumbfounded, his eyes wide as he took in the changes. In just one night, everything had shifted so drastically. The castle looked sleek and renewed, as if it had been given a magical makeover. Felix couldn't believe how much the castle had changed. Zeke explained that the moment the surroundings changed, the system had likely lifted the emergency defense mode, just like it had with the home of the Dragon Slayer or the home of the hero King Kaiser. An old maid approached Zeke, asking if he had enjoyed the meal. She mentioned that she had tried to use her skills for the first time in 50 years and was happy to see him eating heartily. Zeke looked at her, recognizing her presence. Felix looked at the old maid, his eyes widening in recognition. He couldn't believe who he was seeing. Felix asked if she was the one who had guided them yesterday. The old maid chuckled and confirmed that she was indeed the one. An old man walked over, explaining that they couldn't see sunlight because of the curse until now. They couldn't even eat food properly, making it difficult to live. The old man continued, explaining how the curse made them sicker and sicker until they couldn't even talk properly. Talk about a rough time. Zeke stepped up, telling his grandfather that he had something to show him. The old man looked curious, wondering what it could be. Zeke revealed a mask he found at the bottom of the lake. The old man's eyes widened as he recognized it. The old man gasped, realizing it was Agamemnon's golden mask. He couldn't believe that the family symbol had returned after all this time. Zeke asked if he could know more about the mask's origins. The old man nodded, saying he was qualified to know all of their hidden history. The old man began his tale, saying it happened around 50 years ago, when a huge illness spread across Mycenae. Sounds like the start of a horror story. Back then, the Agamemnon family did their best to contain the city. The adults quarantined those with the disease and took the rest of the citizens into the castle with thorough preparations. But the disease spread with incredible speed and couldn't be prevented. After a high fever, red spots would appear, and most would start vomiting blood and die within 3 days. Definitely not a fun time for anyone involved. Zeke couldn't help but wonder if this was the infamous rose disease. The timing of the deaths didn't match, but those symptoms were eerily similar. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, things went from bad to worse. The old man revealed that those who had succumbed to the disease started rising again, attacking the living like something out of a nightmare. Zeke's eyes widened as he processed the information. Zombies? Seriously? The old man explained that these weren't like the zombies led by the black mages. If the dead bit the living, the victims would turn and start attacking people as if infected. Talk about a bad day. With no clear explanation, people started saying a curse had befallen Mycenae. It was all too strange and dreadful for most to understand. They fortified the castle and waited, hoping the disease would pass. But without a definite solution, the corpses just kept on coming. The old man then handed Zeke a mask, explaining it was passed down from the family's oldest ancestor. Zeke, curious, asked if he knew who made the mask. The old man shook his head. Most of the records from before the Golden Age had already disappeared. Zeke had hoped to uncover the magic armor secrets, but the lack of records left him hanging. Classic bait and switch, right? The universe really knows how to leave a guy on read. The old man rose, shaking his head as he began to walk away. This castle and the golden mask were the flex of the Agamemnon family, he explained. The holy power kept the undead at bay, but even that had its limits, like a spiritual Wi-Fi signal that just couldn't reach the basement. Standing before ancient paintings, the old man continued, revealing that the patriarch of the time had to make a tough call. The adults of the family, including the patriarch, volunteered to be bait. Their goal? To drown the dead in the holy lake and purify the corruption. A real hold-my-beer moment in history. But, plot twist, things didn't go as planned. The corrupt energy contaminated the holy lake, turning even the guardian god of the lake into a monster. Talk about an epic fail. Zeke processed the info, realizing that Noel, once a holy beast, had become a monster because of the corruption. Like a glitch in the system that turned the antivirus into a virus. The old man sighed, explaining that the decision was made to help the city and its people. But sadly, no one saw the butterfly effect coming. One small change and suddenly you've got a whole new set of problems. Zeke looked up, putting two and two together. So, the rumor about the curse was spread to protect the citizens, he mused. The old man nodded, confirming that the remaining corrupt power could still cause another outbreak. Like a bad sequel no one asked for. Zeke couldn't help but wonder if the curse that took the children was tied to the same corrupt power lurking around. The old man sighed, explaining that the weakest among them, the little ones, were the most vulnerable to its grasp. With a heavy heart, Zeke called out to the old man, addressing him as grandfather. He confessed his desire to know more about his mother, a topic that seemed to be shrouded in mystery. The old man was taken aback, asking if Arthur hadn't told him anything. Zeke shook his head, revealing that everyone in Draker avoided talking about her, to the point that he didn't even know her name. The old man's expression darkened as he muttered about Arthur, calling him a bastard. He revealed that he had prevented Laura from marrying, his voice filled with regret and anger. Zeke's eyes widened as he finally learned his mother's name, Laura Agamemnon. He recalled hearing that the Agamemnon family once held more power than anyone in the Blood Alliance. The old man chuckled darkly, telling Zeke that the Draker family used to be allied with the Agamemnon. Zeke was taken aback, asking for clarification. The old man explained that during the time of the Holy Empire, the Drakers were merely a knight family from the countryside. Without the Agamemnon's help, they wouldn't have even dreamed of entering the central inner circle. But the Drakers used the collapse of Mycene due to the disease as an opportunity to swallow the other families and increase their size, becoming the Draker family of today. Zeke couldn't help but roll his eyes at the typical Draker family antics. They always had a knack for turning situations to their advantage, didn't they? He pondered why his mother would have married into such a family, knowing their reputation. The old man shrugged, admitting he didn't have all the answers either. Laura, Zeke's mother, had always been a mystery, especially after she overcame that corrupt power to be born. Zeke's curiosity piqued. He wondered how his mother became the sole survivor of whatever ordeal she faced. The old man hinted there was a reason for her survival, leaving Zeke even more intrigued. The old man revealed that Zeke's mother belonged to the healer class. This revelation hit Zeke like a ton of bricks. Zeke's eyes widened in shock. His mother, a healer? That was the last thing he expected to hear. Class. Those gifted with sword skills naturally become swordsmen. Those with a talent for archery become archers. And those skilled with spears become spearmen. That's what class is all about. Zeke's mother, Laura Agamemnon, belonged to the healer class, which gave her the ability to overcome corrupt power. An old man explained that in ancient times, class was a system to boost abilities, but during the Age of Knights, it was simplified to just swordsmen and mages, losing its original meaning. The old man mentioned that most Drakers start as swordsmen. Zeke thought to himself that this explained why his past self had struggled so much. Zeke pondered if his father, Arthur Draker, knew about his mother being a healer. The old man confirmed that Arthur knew and more. Zeke wondered if his father was aware of his other abilities beyond swordsmanship and why he was expelled from the family in his past life. Zeke wondered if there were many healers in the Agamemnon family. The old man explained that healers were rare, so the patriarch position usually went to those with healing abilities. However, Laura, Zeke's mother, left before she came of age and headed to the Holy Kingdom, saying she was going to find a way to save the family. Zeke pondered if his mother tried to learn about the healer class from the Holy Kingdom to find a way to purify the miasma consuming the family. He realized that the truth about his mother was something only his father, Arthur Draker, knew. The old man handed Zeke something, saying he should take it. Zeke, surprised, called him grandfather. The old man revealed that it was Zeke's mother's portrait. The old man continued, saying there was a time when Laura returned to the castle and asked if Zeke knew what she said. "A child with black eyes will bring the family back to normal," she had said. Zeke was taken aback. His mother made a prophecy? Zeke was still processing his mother's prophecy when the old man dropped another bombshell. Laura was always extraordinary, even from a young age, and her irregularity was something no one could explain. Irregular, just like her portrait. Zeke couldn't help but stare, his mind racing with questions. The old man reminded Zeke that he had mentioned needing the family's sponsorship earlier. But since Zeke was Laura's son and had saved the Agamemnon family, the old man had a proposition. With a dramatic flair, the old man offered his hand and declared that from now on, Zeke was the sole heir of the Agamemnon family. Talk about a plot twist. Meanwhile, somewhere else, someone was struggling to spin amidst the clouds. Their instructor was not having it, yelling at them to focus their core more. Felix was getting an earful, his instructor telling him to get it together and hold the sword properly. Ouch, harsh words. Felix, barely holding on, called out for his master to save him. Zeke, ever the mentor, told Felix he had a long way to go and needed to work harder. No sugarcoating there. Zeke's grandfather, the patriarch, kicked off the whole heir appointment process, setting Zeke up as the official successor. With some time to kill before the martial arts competition, Zeke decided to stick around the castle a bit longer, just like the patriarch wanted. While Zeke was busy training Felix, he also started learning the Agamemnon's secret technique, golden swordsmanship. This technique uses both a shield and a sword, making it similar to paladin succession swordsmanship or imperial swordsmanship. Zeke activated his magic armor and equipped Bahamut to Galen's shield, discovering just how stable golden swordsmanship could be. But, plot twist, the magic armor wasn't working properly thanks to some Empire shenanigans. Zeke realized he needed to hurry up and meet Galen to get it remodeled. Just then, the patriarch called out his name. Zeke turned to see the patriarch, who mentioned that trying to work on documents after a long time was quite burdensome. The patriarch suggested they take a short walk in the garden, as there was something important he wanted to discuss. As they walked, Zeke asked about how the city was managed. The patriarch explained that he had left it to trustworthy proxies outside of the territory, and that the family made the important decisions, delivering them through letters. The patriarch then revealed that the reason he had called for Zeke was related to this very matter. The patriarch explained that Agamemnon had long been the guardian of Mycene, with 3 families bound by deep vows always coming to their aid. Those 3 families were the key to everything. In other words, they were Zeke's vassals now. The patriarch confirmed this with a simple yes. To become the official heir, Zeke needed to be acknowledged by these 3 families. Zeke had something to ask related to this matter, and the patriarch encouraged him to speak his mind. Zeke requested the patriarch to invite those 3 families and all the families related to Agamemnon to the castle. The scene shifted to the castle, where people were murmuring in anticipation. People walked towards the castle doors. Some couldn't believe that the Agamemnon castle had returned to its original form. As the doors opened, whispers filled the air, wondering if the curse on the Agamemnon family was really released. Everyone looked on as a voice welcomed them all. The patriarch stepped forward, expressing his gratitude to everyone for their hard work during the long absence of House Agamemnon. He looked surprisingly healthy, almost glowing with energy, which was a bit of a shock to everyone. Someone from the crowd couldn't help but comment on the patriarch's appearance, noting how healthy he looked, almost as if he had discovered the fountain of youth. Whispers spread through the crowd as people began to question if the ruler of the central continent was really returning. The patriarch continued, explaining that he had invited everyone to inform them that the Agamemnon family had been freed from their curse and had finally returned. With a dramatic pause, he announced that he wanted to introduce the heir of the Blood Alliance, Agamemnon. The crowd was stunned, murmurs spreading like wildfire as they tried to process the patriarch's words. Stepping forward, the main character was revealed, and the crowd gasped in recognition. The Knight of the Continent, the genius who had graduated from Valhalla faster than anyone else, stood before them. A voice from the crowd, belonging to a loyal vassal and old friend of the revered Rufus Agamemnon, asked for permission to speak. Arnold Achilles, the oldest friend, stepped forward with a bow, ready to drop some truth bombs. He congratulated the crowd on the Agamemnon family finally having an official heir. But, plot twist, he reminded everyone about the proxy commandments like it was the fine print no one read. A mysterious figure stepped up, dropping the news that the Achilles family had the duty of proving the right of the Agamemnon heir. Like a surprise pop quiz no one saw coming. Two more guys stepped behind Arnold, backing him up. They pointed out that the Hector and Aegis families also had to step up to the plate. Squad goals, much. The patriarch, not missing a beat, declared that they must follow their old tradition. Because why not keep things classic? Looking at the main character and the other families, the patriarch laid down the law. According to his will, they would prove the right of the heir through a night match. Cue the dramatic music. The crowd was absolutely hyped, cheering like they'd already chugged 3 energy drinks. The atmosphere was electric, and the anticipation was real. 2 spectators were geeking out over the upcoming duel, hardly believing they'd get to witness such an epic showdown between top-tier knights. One of them was sweating bullets, the excitement almost too much to handle. He stammered, trying to get his thoughts together. Meanwhile, the main character, geared up with a sword and shield, was the center of attention. The crowd buzzed with shock and awe that Zeke Draker himself was stepping into the arena as a challenger. Zeke knew he had to rely on the temporary defensive gear Agamemnon had prepped for him. Magic armor was off the table this time, but he figured this would be enough to get the job done. A knight swaggered up to Zeke, sizing him up. He couldn't help but acknowledge that this was the guy chosen as Agamemnon's heir. Without missing a beat, the knight got into stance, declaring himself as the great warrior of the Hector family, ready to put Zeke's worthiness to the test. The knight wasn't playing around, immediately provoking Zeke, daring him to make the first move and show what he was made of. And just like that, the tension snapped, the clash about to begin with a noise so loud it could wake the dead. And just like that, the tension snapped, the clash about to begin with a noise so loud it could wake the dead. But before anyone could blink, Zeke Draker's opponent was down for the count. The crowd groaned as the fallen warrior struggled to stay conscious, muttering in pain. The spectators couldn't believe their eyes. Their mighty warrior, the one they had all put their hopes on, had bitten the dust faster than a Gen Z's attention span on a TikTok video. With the crowd still in shock, the commentator stammered, announcing that it was time for the Aegis family's warrior to step up to the plate. Without missing a beat, the knight from the Aegis family launched himself at Zeke, ready to show the world what his family was made of. The sword inched closer to Zeke's face, the cold steel glinting in the light. It was a tense moment, the kind that would make even the bravest of hearts skip a beat. But just like his predecessor, the knight found himself kissing the canvas. The crowd was left in stunned silence, their jaws on the floor. Zeke, however, wasn't done yet. He charged at his next opponent, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. With a swift and powerful strike, Zeke destroyed his opponent's armor, leaving the crowd in awe and his opponent in defeat. It was clear that Zeke Drakers was a force to be reckoned with. The crowd erupted in screams, their shock and awe filling the arena as Zeke stood victorious. Amidst the chaos, a hint of regret flickered in the eyes of an onlooker, realizing that Zeke, despite his immense power, was only 17 years old. Zeke's strength was undeniable, his presence alone exuding an aura of invincibility. With a calm and collected demeanor, Zeke assessed the situation and decided it was time to end it, leaving his opponent bewildered. Zeke declared his intent to finish the battle, his voice echoing with finality. A loud noise resonated through the arena, signaling the end of the match. Zeke's opponent was knocked out cold, and the announcer declared Zeke the winner. With a humble hum, Zeke acknowledged his victory and realized there was only one person left to face. The final great warrior stepped onto the stage, turning towards Zeke, ready for the ultimate showdown. As the final great warrior stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone in the room already knew his reputation. This was the reigning champion of the traditional dueling league. The tension in the air thickened as the figure stepped into the light. The final great warrior, Pharrell Achilles, had arrived, and he was ready to bring the heat. Silence fell over the crowd as Pharrell locked eyes with Zeke. With a calm and collected demeanor, he greeted Zeke, his voice steady and full of confidence. Pharrell introduced himself with a quiet intensity, his presence alone speaking volumes about his strength and skill. Zeke stood his ground, his expression unreadable. The weight of the moment hung between them, the final showdown about to begin. Zeke could feel it. Pharrell was different from the first 2 warriors he had faced. There was something about him that set him apart, a strength that went beyond mere physical power. Pharrell's energy didn't waver, not even for a second. His mental fortitude was as solid as a rock, and Zeke knew this would be the ultimate test of his own strength and resolve. Zeke cracked his knuckles and got into stance, ready to see what Pharrell was really made of. Without hesitation, Zeke charged forward, his determination clear. Their blades clashed in a swift motion, the sound of metal ringing through the air. Zeke grunted, feeling the force of Pharrell's strike, but he wasn't about to back down. Zeke couldn't help but be impressed. Pharrell's fundamentals were seriously on point, making this fight way more interesting than he expected. As both fighters slid back, Zeke realized Pharrell wasn't just skilled, he had serious battle experience under his belt, making this duel even more intense. The crowd was losing it. One spectator muttered about the sheer goodness of the match, while another couldn't believe a knight was actually holding his own against the legendary Pharrell Achilles. Another voice chimed in, equally shocked that someone could match the reigning Central Area Knight dueling champion. The whole thing was wild. Amid the chaos, the Patriarch's voice cut through, firm and full of conviction. He believed in Zeke, and that was all the motivation he needed. The clash of blades was so fast it was almost a blur, each strike carrying the weight of their determination. Pharrell couldn't help but acknowledge it. Zeke Draker was the real deal. The rumors didn't lie, he was a monster on the battlefield. While Pharrell was starting to feel the burn, Zeke wasn't even breaking a sweat. Pharrell knew he had to dig deeper. If Zeke wasn't backing down, then neither would he. Pharrell wasn't playing around anymore. He charged his sword up, energy crackling like a live wire. This was the moment he'd bet everything on. No more holding back, no more second thoughts. It was all or nothing. Zeke could feel it shift in the air. Pharrell had finally unleashed his full power, and the Black Spear's fury was something to behold. Zeke smirked. This was the fight he'd been waiting for. Zeke wasn't about to be outdone. A grin spread across his face as he pondered his next move. Maybe it was time to pull out the big guns, the ultimate technique he'd inherited from Agamemnon. Why not? If Pharrell was going all out, so would he. Zeke's ultimate counterstrike, Golden Sword's dignity, was a sight to behold. The clash of their powers sent shockwaves through the battlefield. This was the kind of fight that legends were made of. The moment of truth had arrived. Their powers collided in a spectacular clash, the energy from their strikes lighting up the battlefield. Neither was willing to back down, and the intensity was off the charts. And boom goes the dynamite. The clash of their powers erupted into a massive explosion of blue and gold light, turning the battlefield into a dazzling fireworks show. No way this isn't the grand finale, right? As the smoke cleared, the dust settled, revealing a scene of utter devastation. The battlefield was now eerily silent, the air thick with tension and the lingering scent of burnt magic. The crowd was left stunned, their mouths agape, eyes wide with disbelief. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the spectators as they struggled to comprehend what had just transpired before their very eyes. Suddenly, a man emerged from the haze, his figure slowly becoming clear. The crowd's attention shifted towards him as he pointed towards the center of the arena. Against all odds, the main character and Pharrell were still standing, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. It seemed like neither of them was ready to throw in the towel just yet. Their shields were shattered, their defenses broken, but their determination remained unshaken. They were going to keep fighting, even if it meant pushing themselves beyond their limits. Just as the tension reached its peak, a man stepped forward, his voice booming across the arena as he commanded them to stop. The Patriarch raised his hand, signaling for silence. His voice carried the weight of authority as he declared that the match would be considered a tie. He explained that it would be meaningless to decide on a winner among such skilled warriors, their prowess and determination equally matched. With a final decree, he acknowledged Sir Zekedraker's right as the heir, bringing an end to the intense battle and leaving the crowd in awe of the warrior's incredible display of strength and courage. The Hector family stepped up, acknowledging Sir Zekedraker's right as the heir. Not to be left out, the Aegis family followed suit, adding their approval to the mix. With that, the Patriarch made it official, declaring the matter settled once and for all. Blessings were showered upon the new heir of the Agamemnon family, marking the beginning of a new era. Zeke couldn't help but compliment Sir Pharrell on the incredible match they had just finished. He admitted that he might have even enjoyed continuing the fight. Sir Pharrell, however, humbly disagreed, insisting that it was he who had lost the match. He pointed out that Zeke's final attack was so powerful that it could have destroyed him completely if Zeke had wanted it to. But Zeke held back, and Pharrell's counterattack wasn't enough. Pharrell thanked Zeke for his consideration during the battle. Zeke was surprised that Pharrell had noticed his restraint, but regardless, he had succeeded in becoming the heir. A smile spread across Zeke's face as he realized the weight of his accomplishment and the respect he had earned. Back in the castle, Felix couldn't contain his excitement, gushing over Zeke's incredible match. Felix continued, still hyping up the match, reminding Zeke that drawing a tie against the league champion, Pharrell Achilles, was no small feat. Plus, the guy had a massive fan club in Atlas, which was kind of a big deal. Zeke, though, wasn't having any of it. He brushed it off, saying Pharrell probably went easy on him out of respect. Felix was confused, asking what Zeke meant by that. Zeke explained that the Achilles family was known for their spear skills, not swords. But Pharrell used a sword against him, which was weird. Felix, confused, pointed out that Pharrell always used a sword in matches. Zeke just smirked, saying that was exactly why Pharrell was such an impressive knight and that Felix should watch and learn from him. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted their conversation. A voice from the other side asked if they could come in. Zeke, ever the gentleman, gave them the green light. In walked Pharrell, bowing respectfully. He thanked Zeke and apologized for bothering him, knowing Zeke must be exhausted after their match. Zeke, ever the gentleman, insisted it was an honor to have Pharrell, an incredible knight, come to find him. He offered Pharrell a seat, setting the tone for what seemed like a casual chat but had that "this is gonna be important" vibe. Pharrell got straight to the point, mentioning he had a request. Zeke, being the chill guy he is, told him to speak freely. No pressure or anything, just two knights having a heart-to-heart. Pharrell admitted he felt a bit lacking compared to Zeke but asked if he could help him. Zeke was intrigued, wondering what Pharrell had in mind. Zeke asked if Pharrell was talking about the Draker martial arts competition. Pharrell confirmed, saying the competition was like a battlefield. Pharrell added that he wanted to help, even if it was just a little bit. Zeke was curious and asked why his master, Sir Duke, described it as such. Pharrell explained that the Draker martial arts competition was notorious for its strange rules. Zeke listened intently, knowing that this competition was anything but ordinary. Pharrell dropped a bombshell: the events and regulations change constantly and without notice every iteration. Zeke was stunned, because who even does that? Pharrell continued, saying the ones who decide the policies are the preparatory committee members, most of whom are elders from powerful families in the central continent. Zeke was starting to see why this competition was such a big deal. Pharrell dropped another truth bomb, saying that the preparatory committee could totally tweak the rules to favor their chosen candidates, turning the competition into an all-out brawl of epic proportions. That was what made this competition stand out from the rest. He gave an example, like setting a rule where aura was a no-go in fights. Zeke's mind was blown, wondering what kind of competition this even was. Zeke realized he never would have known about this stuff since he got chased out of his family in his past life. The plot was thickening, and he was here for it. Zeke finally got why Duke said it would be tough to win without a sponsor family. The competition was looking more like a rigged game show with each passing second. Even as a winning candidate, if the match got manipulated with unfavorable settings, he couldn't rule out the possibility of getting eliminated in the prelims. Pharrell, sensing Zeke's concern, stepped in with a sudden offer. Pharrell grabbed Zeke's hands and pleaded to help him prepare for the competition. Zeke was taken aback, wondering what had suddenly gotten into him. Zeke was confused, questioning if he could really accept this help. He had been backstabbed a lot in the past, so trusting someone like this was hard. But Pharrell was shining with sincerity. After a moment of hesitation, Zeke decided to give Pharrell a chance, saying he'd be honored if he'd help him. The duo was ready to take on the competition, one shady rule at a time. Pharrell reminded Zeke that there was only 1 month left and there was still something crucial they needed to obtain. Zeke, curious, asked what it was. With a serious tone, Pharrell revealed that they needed a broker. Zeke, slightly taken aback, asked Pharrell what he meant by a broker. Pharrell clarified that they needed a highly influential noble who would be on their side. Pharrell continued, stating that one of these influential nobles was the Lady of the Graham Duchy. Zeke realized that to succeed, he must win over Catherine Graham. The scene shifted to a bustling port town, Panstas, filled with a variety of species and vibrant energy. As Zeke walked through the town with Felix and Pharrell, Felix couldn't help but marvel at the diversity of species around them, a sight he had never seen before. Felix pointed out the various species like Nagas, dwarves, and birdmen, noting how different it was compared to Atlas. Zeke pondered the significance of the Graham Duchy, which ruled over Panstas, one of the 3 biggest cities in Midland. Their control over the financial and real estate industries made them the perfect candidates as brokers. As they entered a building, Zeke couldn't help but notice another trait of the place, the abundance of beautiful people around. Inside a large mansion, Zeke observed that the people there never entered businesses that would cut them losses, a testament to their shrewdness. Pharrell glanced at Zeke with a nervous energy, clearly uneasy about something. Pharrell quickly apologized to Zeke, explaining that the Duchess was swamped with debutantes these days, making it tough to get a moment with her. Zeke pondered for a moment, realizing that meeting the Duchess might be more complicated than he thought. He decided he needed to speak up now. Taking a step forward, Zeke was greeted by a curious voice asking if there was something he needed. Zeke stated his intention to meet the Duke, which prompted a question about the purpose of his request. Zeke calmly mentioned his interest in investing in mithril mining, which left the man sweating and taken aback. Flexi and Pharrell exchanged confused glances as Zeke explained that the Graham family had been investigating a vein for 3 years, but were almost out of their initial investment fund. The man awkwardly coughed, impressed by Zeke's insider knowledge. When asked about the amount he was considering investing, Zeke handed over a note, cutting off the man's assumption that they weren't accepting small investments. The note clearly made an impression. Zeke slid the note across the table with a simple "here," the kind of casual move that screams, "I do this all the time." The kind of move that makes you wonder if he carries around 500,000 gold notes like they're business cards. The guy on the receiving end of that note? Absolutely floored. His face went from professional cool to holy cow in 0.2 seconds flat. Inside the castle, lit up like a fancy party no one told us about, someone was already groveling. Total vibe kill, but okay. They apologized to Zeke like he was the boss of the century. Then, in a move that screamed extra, the guy bowed like Zeke was royalty. He went on about how Zeke came all this way, yet he had to wait. Drama much? Suddenly, the guy introduced himself as Brian Graham, like it was supposed to mean something big. Zeke just stood there, probably wondering if this dude was for real. Zeke cut to the chase, asking if Brian had confirmed the check. Brian stumbled over his words, super grateful that Zeke was even considering investing. The awkwardness was palpable. Brian tried to pivot, asking if Zeke was interested in other investments. Zeke shut that down real quick, saying it was fine but he wasn't biting. Zeke dropped the bomb that he needed to focus on the upcoming Draker martial arts competition. Brian's eyes lit up like he'd just heard the juiciest gossip. He went on about how it was the dream stage for young knights. Brian then claimed he had something perfectly suited to help Zeke with the competition. Zeke raised an eyebrow, probably thinking, this guy is laying it on thick. Brian went on, saying he'd schedule a meeting with his wife, Catherine, because apparently this was a family affair now. Zeke must have been wondering what he'd gotten himself into. As Zeke settled in, a mysterious voice cut through the air, welcoming him with a hint of intrigue. A teacup sat delicately on the table, untouched, as if waiting for the conversation to unfold. Catherine, poised and elegant, joined the conversation, revealing that Zeke's reputation as the continent's most talked-about knight had preceded him. Zeke must have felt the weight of those expectations settling on his shoulders. Zeke, ever the humble knight, brushed off the praise, admitting he still had much to learn. He shared his eagerness to participate in the upcoming competition, seeking experience and growth. Classic overachiever move, right? Catherine listened intently, then posed a question about the competition's first match. Zeke confessed he wasn't up to date on the rumors, setting the stage for a classic, "You know what I heard?" moment. Catherine leaned in, her eyes sparkling with a secret. She had heard something about the competition subject. The suspense was killing Zeke, obviously. Zeke, not one to beat around the bush, addressed Catherine directly. He had some intel too and wasn't afraid to use it. The plot was thickening, and so was the tension. Zeke dropped the bombshell, wanted to help Catherine help herself. Mind games or genuine concern? Either way, Catherine was intrigued. Catherine stood up, signaling the end of their chat. It was getting late, but the night had been enjoyable. Zeke must have been wondering what other secrets Catherine held. Just as Catherine was about to leave, Zeke proposed a deal. The night wasn't ready to let the night end without a promise of more. Zeke laid his cards on the table. If he could cure Lady Angelina's illness, would Catherine agree to his offer? High stakes, high rewards. Classic Zeke, always raising the bar. Zeke's mind raced as he recalled the rumors about Catherine's daughter, Angelina, once hailed as the future greatest beauty of the continent. Her name alone sparked curiosity and high expectations. But as the years rolled on past her 16th birthday, the age where she should have made her debut, Angelina remained hidden from high society, a mystery that only deepened with time. Whispers filled the gaps, suggesting maybe her beauty hadn't lived up to the hype, or worse, that some terrible change had befallen her. Catherine's voice cut through the tension, calling out Zeke's boldness, clearly not amused. She made it clear she wasn't interested in whatever strange rumors Zeke had heard and firmly told him to leave the castle. Classic move, kicking him out before he could even finish his pitch. But Zeke wasn't backing down. He dropped a truth bomb, warning that if Angelina's illness was ignored any longer, there would be no turning back. Catherine was visibly shaken, questioning how he could possibly know about her daughter's condition. Zeke's confidence didn't waver. He knew exactly what he was talking about, and he wasn't about to let Catherine brush him off. He started to explain, hinting that the retribution haunting Angelina wasn't what people thought it was. Before he could even finish, Catherine was already losing it, her voice trembling as she blurted out the word curse. Zeke had clearly struck a nerve, and the tension in the room was through the roof. Zeke dropped some heavy knowledge, painting a grim picture of blisters and rotting skin over time. Catherine was shook, stuttering in disbelief, clearly not expecting him to know so much. He went on, explaining that this wasn't some regular illness that could be fixed with a trip to the doctor. Nope, this was a full-on curse, cast with some seriously forbidden magic. Then he hit her with the big question: had she heard about the Agamemnon family's curse? The room felt like it got 10 degrees colder. Catherine nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. She'd heard, all right. Rumor was the curse had finally been lifted recently. But then her eyes widened like she'd just made a wild connection. The Agamemnon family's new heir, could it be? Zeke casually dropped the bombshell that had managed to lift that curse, thanks to some divine intervention from the Radiance God. Catherine grabbed his hands, her voice trembling with desperation. Could he do the same for Angelina? Zeke, ever the chill one, just smirked and said something about everything being according to some higher plan. But he wasn't done. Time was ticking, and the longer they waited, the more dangerous things were going to get. No pressure, right? Zeke wasn't messing around. He demanded to take Lady Angelina right then and there, shifting the scene to a tower. Time was of the essence, and he knew it. As Zeke and Catherine made their way up the stairs, Catherine mentioned the rumors about mana being harmful, suggesting they ditch any mana-operated objects. Zeke wasn't having it, though. He had bigger things on his mind. Zeke thought about the lack of mana lights, but honestly, the darkness was the least of his worries right now. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed through the tower. It was like a scene straight out of a horror movie, and Zeke knew they were running out of time. The scream was coming from behind a door, and Zeke recognized the voice. It was Lady Angelina. Catherine confirmed it, and Zeke's mind started racing. This was way worse than he had imagined. Zeke knew he had to act fast, but he needed a plan. Zeke turned to Catherine and told her to wait outside briefly. He was going in alone. No time for chit-chat, it was go time. Catherine nodded, respecting Zeke's authority as always. Yes, Sir Zeke, she affirmed, watching him step into the room alone. As Zeke entered the room, the atmosphere shifted. This was not going to be a casual chat. Zeke took in the scene, his expression grim. This was truly serious, he thought, his gaze softening slightly. She must have been quite beautiful before. The girl in the room was bandaged up like a mummy, with blood spots and chained up. Not exactly a pretty sight. Zeke stepped closer, his voice steady. Lady Angelina, can you hear me? Slowly. She looked up, her eyes barely visible through the bandages. She muttered something, her voice barely a whisper. Please. Tears streamed down her face as she begged, her voice breaking. Please. Kill me. Zeke slipped his hand into his pocket, his expression firm. He wasn't going to let her give up that easily. He was sorry, but he couldn't let her die. With a swift motion, he pulled out a mask, its purpose unknown but its importance clear. Placing the mask on his face, Zeke's voice echoed with determination. For what was to come in the future, he needed her. The mask activated with a hum, and a system's voice rang out, announcing that the mask's function had connected with the system. Zeke's journey was about to take a wild turn, and not the uber kind. Zeke's mind flashed back to a past life incident, one that left him with knowledge about Angelina's curse. Not the kind of knowledge one would want, but here we are. Back then, he had received orders from his master to track down a sorcerer who practiced ancient black magic. Zeke succeeded in arresting the guy, thinking it was just another mission accomplished. But during the interrogation, Zeke uncovered a truth that hit him like a plot twist in a telenovela. The sorcerer had cursed Angelina. And not just any curse, but one that grows more painful the more beautiful the afflicted person is. Talk about a cruel irony. By the time Zeke searched for her whereabouts, she had already passed away. The curse was a forbidden technique, making it nearly impossible to reverse. Standing in front of Angelina, Zeke recalled the curse's cruel nature. It was a heavy moment, like when your favorite character meets an untimely end. A light began to emit from Zeke's hands, signaling that something significant was about to go down. With the mask that could use great purification, Zeke was ready to take action. The mask's function linked with the system and it was game time. No pressure, right? Zeke wasn't messing around. He channeled the light of great purification straight at Angelina. The system chimed in, reminding him that no curse was too stubborn for this power. Zeke was all in, ready to break whatever dark magic was messing with her. But Angelina wasn't exactly thrilled. Her scream echoed through the room, raw and full of pain. Clearly, breaking curses wasn't a walk in the park. Just then, a knock at the door. Catherine, ever the concerned assistant, was outside wondering if everything was okay. Because, screaming isn't usually a great sign. Catherine wasn't giving up. He pleaded for Zeke to open the door, but Zeke was laser-focused. Just a little more, he thought. The curse was almost broken. Suddenly, things got even weirder. Dark energy started pouring out of Angelina's mouth. Not exactly the kind of thing you see every day. And then, as if things couldn't get any creepier, a face started forming out of the darkness. Like, what even was that? Zeke was probably wishing he'd taken a different side quest right about now. Zeke wasn't about to let some creepy face in the shadows ruin his day. With a smirk, he activated his draconian skill, Gluttony. Oh, it was on now. If the shadows wanted a fight, Zeke was ready to serve it up. The air crackled with tension as Zeke's power surged, the darkness around him responding in kind. Just as things were getting intense, Catherine barged in with her guards, shouting for Angelina. Talk about timing, right? Catherine was clearly not expecting the scene before her. Her eyes widened in surprise, taking in the chaotic spectacle. She turned to Zeke, her voice trembling as she asked if he was responsible for the mess. Zeke, ever the cool customer, just stood there, ready to respond. With a calm demeanor, Zeke addressed Catherine as Lady Catherine, acknowledging her presence with a respectful nod. A smile played on his lips as he told her she had waited a long time for this moment. The tension in the room was palpable, and everyone knew that whatever came next, it was going to be epic. As the morning sun rose, two guys were seen sprinting, their pace urgent and determined. They skidded to a halt in front of Zeke and Catherine, Pharrell panting and barely able to get the words out as he stammered, questioning if Lady Angelina's curse was really gone. Zeke just smiled, looking as chill as ever, and dropped the mic with a line about everything going down as the sun god planned. Catherine, still catching his breath, turned to Zeke with a look of pure gratitude. He thanked Zeke profusely, saying there was no way he could ever repay him for this. Zeke, ever the smooth operator, just hit him with a casual request to help out in the upcoming martial arts competition. Catherine laughed like Zeke had just told the funniest joke, and promised to support him with everything the Graham family had. Just then, a voice called out, announcing that everyone was there. Felix, looking as shocked as everyone else, couldn't believe what he was seeing. As everyone stood in stunned silence, a soft yet commanding voice echoed through the room. Introducing herself as Angelina Graham, the mysterious woman stepped forward, leaving the crowd even more bewildered. The room was filled with gasps as Angelina's beauty left everyone in awe. Even the usually composed Zeke couldn't help but stare. Angelina, with a graceful smile, expressed her gratitude towards Zeke. He, trying to maintain his composure, simply replied that it was a healthy reaction to her beauty. Pharrell, observing Zeke's calm demeanor, couldn't help but admire his master's knightly composure in the face of such beauty. Meanwhile, Felix was internally freaking out, wondering if his master was a eunuch for not being more visibly affected by Angelina's charm. Zeke, trying to focus on the matter at hand, asked Angelina if she had any idea who might have cast a curse on her. Angelina, taken aback, asked him to repeat himself. Zeke clarified, asking if she knew someone who would want to harm her. Angelina's mind raced as she tried to think of anyone who might hold such a grudge against her. Blushing slightly, Angelina wondered if Zeke was angry on her behalf. She couldn't help but admire the knight who had saved her, his concern for her well-being making her heart flutter. Angelina reassured Zeke that she was fine and that the past was behind her. Zeke was taken aback, wondering why she wasn't seeking revenge for what had happened. With a gentle blush, Angelina explained that revenge only leads to more revenge. Changing the subject, she asked if they could have tea together. Zeke couldn't help but think how relaxed she seemed for someone who had just gone through such a tough time. The scene shifted, moving from the cozy room to a new setting. Pharrell stood there, pondering if what he had just heard was really true. He then confirmed that the preliminary event of the martial arts competition was indeed spear throwing. Zeke, addressing Pharrell respectfully, asked if it was strange that spear throwing was chosen as the preliminary event. Pharrell simply replied no, adding that he was surprised because it was actually too conventional. Catherine chimed in, mentioning spear throwing, though. She explained that the distance for the event was far greater than the standard version, with the target placed beyond a mountain, according to what she had heard. Zeke pondered the challenge ahead, realizing that without serious strength and precision, even hitting the target would be a no-go. Pharrell stepped in, hinting he might know which family was trying to game the system. Zeke just let out a dramatic sigh, already sensing where this was going. Pharrell dropped the bomb. The Simmons family was likely behind this. Zeke wasn't even surprised, given their spear-wielding reputation. Classic power move. Zeke smirked, putting two and two together. So that roughneck bastard was entering the competition. Huh? Drama was inevitable. Zeke stood up, asking Pharrell if everyone else had probably already started practicing. Pharrell confirmed some might even be done by now. Zeke realized he had to hustle if he wanted to catch up. Pharrell, confused, asked what the rush was all about. Grabbing his arm, Zeke declared that now that he knew what was up, he had to get to practicing like everyone else. No time to waste. Our main character stands in the forest, spear in hand, looking like he's about to turn someone into a kebab. He pulls back his arm, getting ready to launch that spear like he's in the Olympics or something. With a grunt, he hurls the spear at lightning speed, aiming for a target. Spoiler alert, he's not aiming for the trash can. Plot twist, he misses. Like completely. The spear goes flying, and our guy is left looking a bit embarrassed. Felix chimes in, saying it was so close, just a bit further, and it would have been a bullseye. Meanwhile, Pharrell is over there talking about preparing something by the preliminaries. Priorities, people. Felix is confused, asking what Pharrell is on about. He's like, huh? What would I do? Cue the awkward silence. Zeke suddenly had a lightbulb moment and suggested modifying the spear beforehand. This way, they could fight under conditions more suitable for the match. Pharrell nodded, acknowledging it was a good idea, but pointed out that the other families would ultimately come to the same conclusion. It would all come down to who prepares the most suitable weapon. Zeke turned to Catherine and asked if he could make a request. Catherine, being the chill person she is, just told him to go ahead. As Zeke talked to Catherine, Felix and Pharrell were left in the dark, looking at each other like, what's going on? Catherine raised an eyebrow and asked if Zeke was really going through with the modification. Zeke admitted he wasn't super knowledgeable about weapons, but Catherine trusted he knew what he was doing. With a nod, Catherine agreed to do as Zeke suggested. Zeke was pleased and declared that with that, the preparations for the preliminary rounds were finished. He couldn't wait to show the Simmons what he was capable of. A determined look crossed Zeke's face as he thought about the Simmons, ready to bring his A game. The scene shifted to a dome, a place untouched since the Valhalla graduation. The weight of time hung heavy in the air, memories of the past lingering like echoes. Zeke, Felix, and Pharrell found themselves sitting together, the ghosts of old conversations resurfacing. Zeke couldn't help but ask Pharrell if he too was from Valhalla, a question that seemed to carry more weight than the casual tone suggested. Pharrell nodded, admitting he had always looked up to Sir Flabert, a knight respected by the central nobles. Zeke mused internally, understanding Pharrell's admiration. Flabert was indeed a legend among the central nobles. A sudden step interrupted the moment, a voice calling out for their lord. The atmosphere shifted, anticipation hanging in the air. Liam stood there, a figure from the past. Zeke greeted him, noting how long it had been. Liam acknowledged the time past and thanked Zeke for his help during the graduation exam, a debt he clearly hadn't forgotten. Zeke walked towards Liam, congratulating him on his promotion to a Purple Knight. It was a commendable achievement, one that spoke volumes of Liam's skill and dedication. But Zeke couldn't help but probe further, asking about the rumor that Liam had turned down a recommendation to join Valhalla with Reyna. The question hung in the air, a mix of curiosity and something deeper. Liam's response was simple yet profound. He wanted to be of help to Zeke as soon as he could, a loyalty that was clearly unwavering. Zeke, touched by Liam's loyalty, placed a hand on his shoulder. He then asked if Liam had heard anything from his cousins, the question carrying a sense of urgency and concern. Liam nodded, confirming that he had indeed heard from his cousins. Leon Conrad, it seemed, had taken an indefinite leave from the academy, a decision that left Zeke deep in thought. And then there was Owen Zimmons, who, despite managing to skip a grade, had failed his graduation exam. Liam delivered the news with a hint of disappointment. Raina Draker, on the other hand, was set to graduate and join Valhalla, a piece of news that brought a small smile to Liam's face. As for Jaken Vardek, he had failed to skip a grade but had effectively become the king of his current crop of recruits. Zeke, processing the information, concluded that Leon must have finally snapped. He couldn't help but think that Leon had brought it upon himself. Just then, Decker walked in carrying a chest. He announced that he had brought the items Zeke had mentioned. Zeke, with a hint of excitement, asked Decker to give them to him. Zeke turned to Liam, presenting him with a gift. He declared it as Liam's advancement present, leaving Liam utterly bewildered. Liam stammered, taken aback by the unexpected gesture. He pointed out that Zeke had already done so much for him. But Zeke insisted, urging Liam to take it. Liam, with a mix of curiosity and gratitude, looked at the present, hesitating for a moment. As Liam opened the present, his eyes widened in shock. He was completely bamboozled, struggling to find words to express his surprise and gratitude. Zeke watched as Liam eagerly put on the armor, his face lighting up with excitement. He asked Liam if he liked it, and Liam, still in awe, stammered that of course he did. Liam, trying on the armor, found it fit perfectly. He exclaimed that it fit like a glove and thanked Zeke profusely, his gratitude overflowing. Zeke revealed that he had the armor custom-made by Galleon, based on the armor Liam used in his previous life. He told Liam to continue improving himself, a hint of pride in his voice. Changing the subject, Zeke turned his attention to something else. Zeke looked at Felix and reminded him that Liam was the first man to have sworn loyalty to him, and that Felix was his squire. Zeke instructed Felix to treat Liam as his senior. Felix, taken aback, asked for clarification, confusion written on his face. Felix, looking at Liam with a hint of rivalry, asked why he was below Liam. Zeke, noticing the tension, asked if Felix had a problem with that. Felix quickly backtracked, saying he was just asking, trying to smooth over the situation. Zeke, seeing an opportunity, told Felix that he would give him a chance. If Felix could beat Liam, he would switch their hierarchies around. The challenge was set, and the tension between the two was palpable. Felix hesitated, questioning Zeke's offer, knowing there was no turning back once he accepted the challenge. Liam just stood there, staring blankly, his expression unreadable, adding to the tension. The scene shifted to the training field, where the challenge was about to go down. Armed with wooden swords, Felix and Liam faced off, the clash about to begin. Felix looked rough, taking heavy breaths, clearly struggling to keep up. Felix hit the ground, and Zeke stepped in, declaring Liam the winner of the match. Pharrell rushed in, calling out to Zeke, who responded with a mix of curiosity and concern. Pharrell handed Zeke some papers, insisting he read them himself, leaving Zeke puzzled. Zeke's eyes widened as he read the news Raina Draker was entering the tournament. Pharrell explained that since any Purple Knight could participate, the Turnin family had quickly signed her up. Zeke turned to Liam and asked if he had heard the news about Raina entering the tournament. Liam, caught off guard, could only manage a confused response. Zeke informed Liam that he would be participating in the tournament as well, and his goal was to defeat Raina. Pharrell chimed in, reminding everyone that Raina Draker was a pure-blooded awakener and one of the strongest contenders despite her young age and lack of titles. Zeke, however, was unfazed and stated that he was counting on Liam to win. He believed that someone who had sworn loyalty to him should easily be able to beat someone of Raina's level. Pharrell couldn't help but think that only Zeke would think that way, his mind completely different from that of common men. Zeke asked Liam if he understood his orders and reminded him to keep working towards taking down Raina. Liam, determined, responded that he would try his best. Meanwhile, Felix, still on the ground, couldn't help but wonder why he had become Zeke's squire. As Felix pondered his fate, the scene shifted to a serene forest where tents were neatly pitched under a clear sky. The calm before the storm, perhaps? Footsteps echoed through the forest, drawing closer to the tents. Someone was approaching, and the vibe was about to change. A guy peeked out from behind a tree, his eyes widening in surprise. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. There, standing tall and proud, was the Turin family. The guy's jaw nearly hit the forest floor. And if that wasn't enough, the Simmons family made their entrance too. Plot twist alert. The forest was turning into a family reunion no one signed up for. Owen strolled up to Reina like he owned the place. It had been a hot minute since they last saw each other. Owen couldn't help but gloat. The Simmons were going to crush it at the upcoming martial arts competition. But Reina wasn't having any of it. She shut him down real quick, reminding him that he would be joining the competition too. Owen's confidence took a nosedive faster than a lead balloon. Just as Owen was about to ask who he was, a familiar voice cut through the tension. It was Zeke, the main man himself, greeting Reina like it was no big deal. Classic Zeke, stealing the spotlight. Zeke casually asked Reina how she had been, like they were just old pals catching up at a cafe. Owen's face turned red hot. Zeke Draker was the last person he expected to see there. Owen fumed internally, calling Zeke a persistent bastard in his mind. But even Zeke wouldn't stand a chance without a sponsor family, or so he thought. Owen was so sure of his victory, he almost didn't notice the sound of galloping horses approaching. Flags fluttered in the wind as the horses came to a halt. Owen stood stunned as the riders dismounted, their presence demanding attention. The riders greeted Zeke with respect, addressing him as Sir Zeke Draker, heir of not one, but 3 powerful families. It turned out, through Zeke's influence, the Hector, Agamemnon, and Aegis families had gathered. And as if that wasn't enough, Lady Angelina from the Graham family had sent escort guards. Owen's confidence was clearly about to take a major hit. Owen was about to lose it. This was not how he expected things to go. And then, out of nowhere, a voice boomed, making Owen jump even more. The sudden shout echoed through the room, grabbing everyone's attention. It was like someone just dropped a beat in the middle of a silent library. The crowd started murmuring, confused and taken aback by the sudden outburst. It was clear that no one saw this coming. Zeke, the main character, couldn't help but notice the man who had just made the grand entrance. He had a feeling this was about to get interesting. The man was none other than Gareth Draker, also known as the Scarlet Knight. His reputation preceded him, and his presence was commanding. Gareth was a big deal. He led one of the 3 knight groups under the Draker name, the Black Wolf Knights. Zeke remembered him from his past life, from the front lines of the Third Continental War. Gareth announced that the Draker martial arts competition was about to begin its preliminary round. Participants were called to step up and choose their weapons. The energy in the room shifted, and everyone could feel the tension rising. Felix leaned in and whispered to Zeke, pointing out that the weapons had been refitted for spear throwing. This wasn't your average competition, it seemed. Felix explained that normally they would just take the spears, but these were covered in fabric. The rumors must be true, and things were about to get real. Zeke handed Felix the weapon, declaring it was his to use. Felix, taken aback, questioned what kind of weapon it was. Zeke casually mentioned that it was the weapon Felix would be using for the event he had secretly signed him up for. Felix was shocked and protested, but Zeke just grinned. Meanwhile, Gareth announced that everyone must be curious about the preliminary event. He explained that the event was called Pierce It Hard, where participants would receive higher marks for piercing more iron plates. The crowd murmured in disbelief, finding the event's name quite bold. Felix, panicking, turned to Zeke, saying they had thought it would be a long-distance throwing event. Zeke told Felix to look at his spear. Felix, confused, asked what he meant. Felix was shocked to realize it wasn't a javelin. He asked Zeke if he had already known about the preliminary event. Zeke casually mentioned that his family wasn't really into javelins, like it was some kind of inside joke. Then Owen walked up, and Zeke couldn't help but wonder why they'd picked spear throwing for the preliminary event. The announcer introduced Owen Simmons as the first contestant. Owen, feeling the pressure, told everyone to watch carefully. Owen took his shot, determined to outperform everyone. Owen scored 6 points and couldn't resist looking back at Zeke, asking what he thought of that. Felix, however, wasn't feeling confident at all. Zeke told him to stop making such a fuss about it. Felix took his turn and scored 3.5 points. Liam stepped up next, and with a swift move he scored 3 points. Not bad, but not enough to catch up to Felix just yet. Reina was up next, and she was ready to show everyone what she was made of. Reina struck with precision, scoring 4 points. But she couldn't help but feel a bit frustrated with her spear choice. Maybe something lighter would have been better. Reina glanced at the others, signaling that it was Nooz's turn. Zeke Draker was up next, walking towards the stage with a calm confidence. Owen watched Zeke, even Felix didn't seem to like him much. Owen couldn't help but wonder what was up with him. Owen's eyes widened as he saw Zeke's weapon. A sword mounted to a spear pole? That was definitely not something you see every day. The instructor raised an eyebrow, questioning Zeke's unusual choice of spear. But Zeke simply nodded, confirming his decision. This was going to be interesting. Zeke wasn't here to play around. He infused his spear with a bright aura, ready to show what he could do. No cap, he was about to begin. A bright blue light engulfed the spear, glowing with an intensity that caught everyone's attention. With a swift motion, Zeke launched the spear, its trajectory a blur of light and speed. Owen was left stunned, his eyes wide as he processed what just happened. Reina, too, was taken aback, her expression a mix of surprise and awe. Even the instructor was at a loss for words, barely managing to utter a shaky count. Zeke stood there, confident and unfazed. As expected, he had passed smoothly, his performance leaving no room for doubt. But Zeke's gaze shifted, a hint of something more lingering in his eyes as he looked around. Zeke's eyes landed on a hooded figure, and his mind raced. Someone else had been sent to this place at the same time as him? That was definitely not part of the plan. Suspicious much? The hooded figure was a woman, her blonde hair barely visible under the shadow of her cloak. Zeke's curiosity was piqued, and he couldn't help but wonder who she was and what she was doing here. Zeke's eyes widened as he read the name Erin Sabrina. That name didn't ring any bells, and he couldn't help but feel a mix of confusion and intrigue. The mysterious woman began to approach him, her cloak swaying slightly with each step. Zeke's curiosity grew, wondering who this person could be. She stood before him now, her gaze fixed on him. The intensity in her eyes made Zeke feel like she was staring right through him. Then it hit him. The pieces started to fall into place. This woman was his sister, Helen Draker, known as the Knight of Steel. Memories of his past life flooded back. The chaos that ensued after Carly Draker's death, the White Gold Knight, at the hands of the Pirate King. The Draker family had been in turmoil, split into two factions before Abel took over as patriarch. And right at the heart of one of those factions was Helen, his sister, standing before him, a figure from his past and a key player in the family's tumultuous history. Zeke recalled how Helen, after opposing Abel as patriarch, organized rebel forces and even built a barricade in the Duchy of Troy to fight him. But despite her fierce resistance, she fell in combat against the imperial forces, a true knight till her last breath. Zeke wondered what could have possibly driven her to join a martial arts competition, given her traditional knightly background. It was a surprising turn of events, to say the least. Snapping back to the present, Zeke refocused, pushing aside the lingering questions about his sister. Catherine analyzed the Simmons family's traits and guessed they would opt for a spearing activity, impressing Zeke with her sharp insight. Zeke acknowledged that without Catherine's help, he wouldn't have prepared a spear for the competition. Thanks to her, 3 of their men made it to the main round as well. Catherine modestly brushed off the praise but hinted at having some precise information this time around. Catherine revealed that the first event in the main round was running. Felix, however, seemed confused by the idea of a running event in a martial arts competition. Farrell clarified that the running event was not your average race. It was the Draker family's survival running, a whole different beast. Farrell explained that this was no ordinary running competition where reaching the end fairly meant victory. Instead, it was a brutal match where participants could be ambushed or forced into outright combat. Talk about a plot twist. Liam and Felix deflated like a couple of sad balloons, realizing that without a sponsor family, they'd be out of the game faster than you can say, plot twist. Zeke, however, wasn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. He knew he had to figure out what Helen Draker really wanted. There was no way she was on the same side as Abel or Simmons. He just needed to confirm it. Speaking of Helen, there she was. She turned around, her gaze meeting someone's. Carly Draker stood before her, insisting Helen call her sister when they were together. Talk about sibling bonding. Carly asked Helen how it felt to see Zeke in person. Helen's hand trembled slightly on her sword, as Carly pointed out that Helen wanted to face Zeke herself. Carly mentioned the dragon-slaying arts technique, Dragon Scale Pierce, that she had seen in the preliminary round. It was impressive, she admitted. Carly couldn't help but compare Zeke's Dragon Scale Pierce to the one she saw in the preliminaries. His version was way more intense, almost like he could actually snag a dragon mid-flight. Wild, right? With a reassuring hand on Helen's shoulder, Carly pointed out that Zeke would be a huge asset to their team. She encouraged Helen to keep testing him until she could acknowledge his strength. Helen, pondering Carly's words, simply whispered Zeke's name, as if trying to measure his potential. Helen continued to think about Zeke's potential, her mind racing with possibilities. The scene suddenly shifted to a snowy area, where Gareth stood ready to address the group. He asked if everyone was prepared for the challenge ahead. Gareth explained that the task wasn't anything out of the ordinary. They just needed to reach the Atlas summit within 48 hours. No big deal, right? With the main character, Raina, and Owen standing by, Gareth signaled the start of the challenge. The race to the summit had begun. Owen, with a smirk on his face, couldn't resist teasing Zeke. It seemed like Zeke didn't quite grasp the concept of a survival run. Zeke, still smirking, ordered Felix to go to a cave. Felix, confused and a bit nervous, questioned what was in the cave. Zeke gave Felix a stern look, hinting that whatever was in the cave was not something Felix would want to deal with. Felix, now even more nervous, reluctantly agreed and headed towards the cave, promising to be back soon. The trio made their way to the cave, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. Felix, taking a deep breath, was the only one who ventured into the dark cave. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed from the cave, sending chills down their spines. Felix came sprinting out of the cave, screaming for help, with massive polar bears hot on his heels. Talk about a surprise no one signed up for. Zeke quickly turned to Liam, telling him to take out his sword. Liam, caught off guard, asked Zeke to repeat himself, clearly not expecting this turn of events. Zeke smirked, thinking about how useful their pelts would be. Liam was still confused, but Zeke's mind was already racing with plans. Meanwhile, in the icy wilderness, 3 figures trudged through the snow, their breaths visible in the frigid air. 2 of them were clearly struggling, their faces etched with exhaustion. The cold was brutal, biting through their Arctic gear like it was nothing. Raina glanced back, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. Suddenly, massive monsters emerged from the blizzard, their imposing forms sending a chill down everyone's spines. A horde of Yetis appeared, their growls echoing through the icy landscape. The situation was going from bad to worse real quick. Raina's eyes narrowed as she put the pieces together. It had been suspiciously quiet on their way up, and now she knew why. Her expression darkened as she realized the truth. The Zimmons had lured the Yetis their way, and now they were trapped in a frozen nightmare. The Yetis growled menacingly, their eyes locked onto the group. Things were about to get very, very real. And just like that, the Yeti lunged, kicking off the chaos with a battle cry that echoed through the frozen air. Raina barely dodged the attack, her reflexes sharp but her breath already growing ragged in the icy atmosphere. She slid back, putting some distance between herself and the Yeti, but the cold was already taking its toll. Breathing hard, Raina realized the sub-zero temperatures were draining her stamina faster than she had anticipated. Glancing back at her group, she knew even if she could endure it, they wouldn't stand a chance against the Yetis. The Yeti growled again, its eyes locked onto the group, ready to strike once more. And then, as if things weren't already bad enough, more Yetis emerged from the shadows, joining the fray. Raina made a quick decision, turning to her group with a determined look. She would hold the Yetis off while the others escaped. Her companions protested, but she was already steeling herself for the fight of her life. Raina was not having it. She yelled at the top of her lungs, demanding to know why they were still there, clearly disobeying her orders. Her group, realizing they were pushing their luck, apologized quickly and bolted. No one wanted to be on Raina's bad side, especially not when she was in full-on battle mode. The Yetis, confused by the sudden retreat, let out a low, rumbling growl. Raina, seizing the moment, taunted them, asking where they thought they were going. With a deep breath, Raina got into her battle stance, accepting her fate. Even if this was the end for her, she was ready. And with that, she leaped into action. If this was going to be her final stand, she'd make sure it was for the sake of those who followed the Turin family. Suddenly, a figure clad in polar bear fur descended from above, hovering over Raina and the Yetis like some kind of Arctic avenger. And just like that, boom goes the dynamite literally. An explosion rocked the scene, because why not add some fireworks to this icy showdown? One of the Yetis wasn't having a great day, sliced and diced. It let out a guttural groan that echoed through the chaos. Reina's eyes widened as she locked onto the figure. Wait, no way. It was none other than Zeke Draker himself making an entrance like he owned the place because, well, he kind of did. His crew wasn't far behind, rushing in like they were late for a Black Friday sale. Felix, ever the enthusiastic one, shouted out to his master like a kid spotting their favorite superhero. Without missing a beat, someone from the crew chucked a javelin toward Zeke, because when in doubt, throw a spear. Zeke caught it effortlessly, like it was just another day in the life of a legendary hero. No big deal, just catching flying weapons mid-air. Zeke launched it back like a bullet because why not? It was practically a game of catch now. The Yetis, however, were not here for this impromptu game. They got scared and started to back away. Zeke turned his attention, calling out to Reina, his voice steady and commanding. He reminded her that the Turin family does not forget favors, his tone hinting at a debt that needed to be repaid. Reina, taken aback, asked what he wanted, her voice a mix of caution and curiosity. Zeke replied that it was nothing much, just a simple condition, his words carrying an air of nonchalance. He suggested they quickly head to their goal, his focus unwavering and determined. As they pressed forward, more people began to arrive around them, the area slowly filling with competitors. Gareth observed the scene, noting that 30 people had already passed through. He acknowledged the count with a simple affirmation. With time almost up, Gareth prepared to wrap things up. Owen couldn't help but smile as Gareth proposed ending the match. He was thrilled that his strategy of blocking Reina with the Yetis had actually worked. Just as it seemed like it was over, a voice called out, asking everyone to wait a moment. Owen turned back to see what was happening. To his surprise, the Protagonist and Reina had arrived. Owen couldn't believe they had made it, but there they were, standing before everyone. Gareth commented on their timely arrival, noting that with these last competitors, the first match was officially over. He instructed everyone to rest and prepare for the second match the next day. Just as he was about to leave, a voice called out his name, Zeke Draker. He turned to see Helen, who acknowledged his presence with a hint of admiration. She noted how impressive it was that he made it this far, despite the attempts of the sneaky Joes to sabotage him. Zeke was confused and asked what she was trying to say. Helen clarified that she had no interest in childish games. She simply wanted to test his limits and abilities. With that, Helen walked away, leaving Zeke with a final warning not to disappoint her, as she would be watching him until the end of the competition. Zeke pondered her words, realizing that she must have joined Carly's faction and was participating in the martial arts competition to see if he was worthy, just like the Knight of Steel. Before he could dwell on it further, Reina appeared, declaring that her life was in his hands. Zeke smirked as Reina, with a hint of desperation, asked what he wanted from her. Zeke, still mad about the previous match, suggested they team up for the second round, figuring those Timon guys would pull some shady stuff again anyway. Reina agreed to his offer, thinking it was a reasonable choice under the circumstances. Now that they were on the same team, Reina decided to share some intel she had. She began to reveal what she knew about the second match. Zeke was intrigued, urging her to spill the details. Meanwhile, Felix and Liam were eavesdropping, trying to figure out what was going on. Reina pointed out that they didn't know about the second match, but she had barely managed to dig up some information. She revealed that the second match was going to be tightrope wrestling, but with swords. Yikes, talk about raising the stakes. Zeke sat with his crew, taking a moment to process the wild twist of tightrope wrestling. Not exactly your everyday gym class activity. Pharrell scratched his head, clearly not sold on the idea of tightrope wrestling. Zeke, however, wasn't about to let hesitation slow them down. Pharrell reassured Zeke that the event itself wasn't the issue, but something else was clearly on his mind. Pharrell dropped the real concern the Zimmons family had chosen this event, and that was sketchy. Zeke agreed, knowing tightrope wrestling wasn't exactly the easiest event to cheat in. Just then, Catherine walked in, her timing as perfect as ever, ready to drop some knowledge or maybe just more drama. Zeke greeted Catherine, but she cut straight to the chase, confirming she knew about the event for the second round. Zeke thanked her but pointed out they already knew. Catherine, unfazed, quipped that news traveled fast these days. Catherine hinted she had something new to share, leaving Zeke curious and a little suspicious. Catherine pulled out a paper with a dramatic flair, revealing the words tightrope wrestling event. Zeke raised an eyebrow, already sensing this wasn't going to be your average wrestling match. The paper detailed a group competition, But the illustration showed something far more intense: tightrope wrestling with swords. Because why not add a little danger to the mix, right? Pharrell chimed in, explaining that the more people on your side, the better. It was all about strategy, and apparently teamwork was going to be key here. He added that a one-on-one match would have been tough for their opponents to ambush Zeke, so the Simmons team must have quickly changed the event to a group competition. Zeke couldn't help but smirk, acknowledging their good thinking. Catherine pulled out a fan with a flourish, laughing softly as he assured Zeke not to worry. Zeke, ever the strategist, asked if Catherine had a plan up his sleeve. Catherine just smiled mysteriously, leaving Zeke both intrigued and slightly nervous about what was coming next. Catherine reminded him that sponsor families exist to support in times like these, hinting that backup was already on the way. The next day, the tightrope wrestling area was buzzing with anticipation. The stage was set, and Zeke was ready to face whatever crazy challenge came his way. Gareth stepped forward, ready to lay down the rules of this tightrope wrestling match. He continued, explaining that the details of this match were about to get interesting. The catch? Falling from the tightrope meant immediate elimination. But on the rope, anything goes. Gareth wrapped up by telling everyone to respond however they'd like based on the situation. Drama was about to unfold. Felix, already sweating, turned to Zeke and stammered that he'd rather just abstain from this whole thing. But Zeke wasn't having it. With an intense stare, Zeke laid down the ultimate threat: whoever gets eliminated here will have to do a year of isolated training. No one wanted that. Felix trembled at the thought, his mind clearly racing with dread. Before anyone could back out, Owen leaped onto the rope, signaling the start of the match. Owen landed smoothly and boasted that this was the Simmons family's special training tool. He'd been riding this tightrope since he was 5, so he was basically a tightrope prodigy. Owen was feeling pretty good about his tightrope skills, but then he saw the main character and Reina already on the other side. Talk about a mood killer. He sighed, thinking it was a shame to reveal his family's secret training tool like this. But if exposing the secret meant he could take them down, then so be it. Owen was ready to do whatever it took to eliminate them. With a fierce look, Owen ordered his crew to drop those bastards. It was time to get rid of them for good. But as Owen watched, his confidence started to waver. He let out a confused grunt, his eyes widening in disbelief. One by one, his crew started to fall off the tightrope, screaming as they dropped. It was like a bad slapstick comedy, but Owen wasn't laughing. Owen couldn't believe his eyes. What the heck was going on? This wasn't part of the plan. He looked over and saw the main character and Reina, standing steady as rocks on the tightrope. How were they not falling? Owen was seriously confused. The main character just stood there, looking all cool and collected. He muttered about how impressive it all was, just as he thought it would be. Classic main character move. Am I right? Meanwhile, Catherine was flexing her financial muscles, buying off the Simmons family like it was Black Friday. Girl was rich like Scrooge McDuck swimming in gold coins rich. Zeke, our main man, stood there looking all cool and collected. He muttered about how the dregs had been dealt with and it was time to begin. Classic protagonist energy, no cap. Reina, not to be outdone, whipped out her aura sword. Things were about to get lit, and not in the candlelight dinner kind of way. She wasn't playing around, using the Oxskull Breaker move to knock people off like they were bowling pins. Strike. Liam, seeing an opportunity, grabbed a rope. You could almost see the light bulb ping above his head. With a shake of the rope, people went tumbling down like dominoes. And just like that, the tide of the battle started to turn. As the chaos unfolded, a guy looked up, barely registering what was happening around him. Before he could react, a foot came crashing down on him, adding to the mayhem. Meanwhile, Felix was zipping through the battlefield like a superhero, knocking people over left and right. Zeke watched the scene unfold, realizing they were all at level 113,940,000. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Owen, on the other hand, was terrified, his fear palpable as Zeke turned his attention towards him. With a dramatic flourish, Zeke pointed his sword at Owen, challenging him to a one-on-one duel, knight style, and no powers allowed. Owen, furious, refused to fall for Zeke's provocations, his anger boiling over. Zeke wasn't having it. With a shrug, he dashed forward, leaving Owen fuming in his wake. Classic move, really when in doubt, just go for it. Zeke wound up for a swing, fully ready to take the first shot. If Owen wouldn't make a move, he'd just have to take matters into his own hands. Zeke leapt forward, but his strike was suddenly blocked. And who else would it be but Helen stepping in? Owen was totally thrown off. He was not expecting backup from his own side, and his face screamed pure confusion. The two fighters landed on the ropes, the tension rising like a bad reality show cliffhanger. Zeke, not missing a beat, shot Helen a look. Was she really siding with the enemy now? Drama alert. Helen wasn't having it. She just wanted to test Zeke's abilities, nothing more, nothing less. Classic Helen, always keeping everyone on their toes. Zeke glanced at his sword, feeling the insane pressure radiating from it. He knew he was only holding it together because of Bahamut. A smirk played on his lips as he wondered if this was another one of Helen's tests. Like last time. Helen confirmed it with a simple yes, and Zeke, feeling the familiar vibe, knew it was go time. Without hesitation, Zeke infused his sword with aura, ready to do as Helen wished. No cap, he was all in. Zeke swung his sword with precision, the aura-infused blade cutting through the air like a hot knife through butter. Helen mirrored his stance, her own sword slicing the air as she prepared to clash with Zeke's blade. Their swords met in a flurry of sparks. The speed of their exchange was insane, each strike faster than the last. Gareth watched the duel intently, his gaze fixed on Zeke's every move. Gareth couldn't help but be impressed. Zeke Draker truly lived up to his reputation as the continent's greatest genius. But it wasn't just Zeke who caught his attention. The female knight, Helen, was holding her own against him. Zeke couldn't help but acknowledge Helen's skill. She wasn't bluffing when she said she was going to test his abilities. Zeke realized he needed to step up his game if he wanted to keep up with Helen's skills. Just as Zeke prepared to get serious, the match time ended, leaving him in shock. Gareth announced that the second round was now complete. The third round was about to begin with the remaining participants. Zeke felt the pressure, knowing they were getting to the end. Zeke thought about facing Helen again in the next round. Helen seemed surprised as Zeke called her by her full name, Helen Draker. Zeke explained that normally he wouldn't have recognized her, just like everyone else. But they were siblings after all, and he should at least know her face. He admitted that if he hadn't seen her portrait in his past life, he wouldn't have known her. Helen acknowledged that Zeke knew who she was. With a parting glance, Helen walked away, telling Zeke she would see him in the next match. As Helen walked away, Zeke turned to his crew, ready to break down what just happened. Catherine stepped in, laying out the plan for the third round. It was going to be a tournament format, perfect for publicity since the public would be watching. Pharrell chimed in, pointing out that this format would directly determine the final champion, which was basically a win for Zeke since no one could defeat him one-on-one. But Catherine wasn't done. She dropped a bombshell: no one could let their guard down because there was a significant rule for this match. The use of aura was forbidden. This meant pure physical strength alone would decide the outcome. Pharrell shot up like he'd been electrocuted. Such an extreme rule? This was getting intense. Zeke, ever the chill one, told Pharrell to calm down. It was fine, he said, but you could tell this was going to be a wild ride. Zeke, not bothered by the aura issue, reminded himself that his sword skills were still on point. He had been training for 7 long years, after all. Pharrell couldn't help but admire Zeke's confidence. He was ready to win no matter what. Pharrell, being the supportive friend he was, chimed in, eager to help Zeke train for the tournament. Zeke, though grateful, couldn't help but roll his eyes internally at Pharrell's extra enthusiasm. Some things never change, he thought with a smirk. As the scene shifted to a fancy mansion under the night sky, the vibe got a bit more mysterious. Footsteps echoed through the grand halls, adding to the suspense. Zeke strolled through the mansion, making his way to Fannin. Fannin greeted Zeke with a warm smile, happy to see him. Zeke asked Fannin if he had settled into his new role, showing genuine concern for his well-being. Fannin admitted it was a bit overwhelming at first, but he was working hard to live up to the responsibility. After all, being the president of a big pharmaceutical company was no joke. Zeke glanced around, reflecting on how his role was mainly about handling external affairs while someone else managed the real work behind the scenes. As Kay woke up, Zeke realized that the person pulling the strings was none other than the syndicate's new boss, Kay herself. Kay groggily acknowledged his presence, still half asleep. Kay mentioned that Zeke must be busy with the martial arts competition, yet he still showed up. Zeke reminded her that she was the one who insisted it was urgent. Zeke asked why she sent an emergency message, hoping it wasn't just because of the mountain of paperwork. Kay admitted that the paperwork was an issue, but there was something else. Zeke wondered if there was trouble with the cartel. Kay shook her head, indicating that wasn't the case. Kay pointed directly at Zeke, her expression serious. Zeke was taken aback as Kay declared that he was the problem. Zeke processed her words, trying to understand the situation. He concluded that the Imperial Intelligence Bureau and the Draker Order of the Black Knights were investigating the South. Kay confirmed his suspicion. Flashback time. Kay mentioned that the Imperial Intelligence Bureau was investigating the group responsible for wrecking the Pabella cartel's camp. And the Draker Order of the Black Knights? Well, they were on the hunt for whoever messed with Don Juan. Zeke had a hunch about why the Imperial Intelligence Bureau was after him. He figured it was because he took out Cain Zimon's Constantinus and snatched his magic armor. That was more than enough reason for them to be on his tail. But what about the Draker Order of the Black Knights? That was the real question. Kay pointed out that he didn't need to overthink it. That's just how the Order of the Black Knights rolled. If he was really worried, Kay offered to have Simon take care of every informant out there. But Zeke wasn't feeling that cartel vibe. They didn't need to take out everyone investigating them. Changing the subject, Zeke asked about the Black Yaksha guy. Was he adjusting well to the South? Turns out, he was the one who gave them this intel. Kay figured it was because he used to be part of the Intelligence Bureau, so he was super sensitive to Imperial movements. She liked him for being really good at his job. Zeke agreed, glad he didn't kill him and helped him escape instead. Just when they thought they were done with surprises, Fannin dropped another bombshell. Zeke couldn't believe his ears. There was more? Fannin revealed that the newly hired alchemists were causing trouble. Zeke was taken aback. The alchemists were acting up? Fannin explained that they were invited to create a new drug using soma, but they suddenly went on strike and stopped doing research. Zeke wondered if there was any way to convince them to work again. Fannin admitted they already tried, but those two were just far too eccentric to handle. Zeke couldn't help but think, 2 alchemists? Could it be? Zeke asked if those 2 alchemists were twins by any chance. Fannin was surprised, wondering how Zeke knew. Zeke smiled, realizing it really was them. The genius twin alchemists Al and Jeff were the ones causing the ruckus. Back in the day, when the rose disease started spreading like wildfire and people were dropping like flies, the whole continent was basically in shambles. Just when everyone was about to lose all hope, the genius twin alchemists, Al and Jeff, swooped in like superheroes. Thanks to their mad skills, they cooked up a remedy and boom, the rose disease was no longer a death sentence. But here is the kicker, they dropped the formula for free. Zeke couldn't believe it either. That was the only reason he could teach Melissa the remedy. Though he was still wondering what on earth they wanted for their strike. Turns out, they had uploaded a list of alchemy ingredients they wanted. But it was all super random and had nothing to do with their new drug research. Plus, it was crazy expensive. Fannin had to cut their budget, and you guessed it, they went on strike immediately. Zeke wasn't having it though. He told Fannin to just give them everything they wanted. Fannin was sweating bullets, those ingredients were pricey. But Zeke was dead set on his decision. He walked away, telling Fannin to provide them with everything they needed for now. And with an intense tone, Zeke added that they better come up with a proper result, or else he would go find them himself. Fannin and Kay exchanged a nervous glance, their faces slightly pale as they swallowed hard, clearly shaken by Zeke's intense warning. Fannin quickly nodded, his voice barely steady as he assured they understood the gravity of the situation. The scene swiftly shifted to the Grand Arena, where the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and tension. Gareth stepped forward, his presence commanding attention as he addressed the gathered knights, asking if everyone was ready. The main character, Zeke, took center stage, announcing that the 3rd round would be a tournament-style duel between the 8 knights. Gareth took a step forward, his voice booming as he declared the first match. The competitors were announced Felix Valencia and Morton Heroes, 2 formidable knights ready to face off. Zeke couldn't help but comment on Felix's isolated training, to which Felix responded with a respectful acknowledgement. Zeke's gaze shifted, his expression turning serious as he pondered about the other competitor. Morton, carrying his sword on his shoulder, stood confidently. Zeke couldn't shake off the feeling that Morton was a vassal of the Zimmons family, adding an extra layer of intrigue to the upcoming duel. The duel kicked off with Gareth's command, and Morton wasted no time, charging forward with the confidence of someone who had already won in his mind. He swung his sword, declaring he would end things quickly, but Felix was ready. Felix dodged the first strike with ease, almost like he was swiping left on a bad dating profile. Morton's sword missed its mark, and the crowd could sense the shift in momentum. Morton's frustration was palpable. He wasn't expecting Felix to be this agile. He swung again, but Felix dodged once more, almost like he was playing a high-stakes game of limbo. Morton's attacks kept coming, but Felix was in the zone, dodging each strike with precision. It was like watching a dance, but with more swords and less jazz hands. Felix couldn't help but feel a bit smug. He had been nervous for nothing. Morton's skills were lacking, and Felix was starting to enjoy himself. Morton's frustration boiled over. He was furious, his pride taking a hit with each missed strike. Felix, on the other hand, was cool as a cucumber. Felix raised his leg, preparing for a counterattack. The crowd held their breath, sensing that the tide of the duel was about to turn. Felix unleashed a kick so powerful it could probably send someone straight to next week. The crowd gasped as he shouted to wrap this up, leaving no doubt that he was done playing around. The impact was so intense that it sent Morton crashing through the air, culminating in a massive explosion that lit up the entire stadium. The crowd erupted in a mix of shock and awe. As the dust settled, Morton lay motionless on the ground, completely out cold. Gareth's voice boomed over the speakers, declaring that Morton Hero 5 had left the stadium. The crowd let out a collective sigh, realizing the battle was over. The cheers for Felix were deafening as Gareth announced him as the winner. Felix couldn't help but feel a wave of relief, muttering to himself that thankfully, he wouldn't have to endure isolated training. The crowd laughed, sharing in his relief and joy. Gareth's voice cut through the celebrations, announcing the next match with his usual enthusiasm. The crowd quickly settled down, their attention shifting to the next contestants. Liam Stone and Raina Draker stepped into the spotlight, ready for their turn. The crowd murmured in anticipation, wondering what these two had in store. Liam gave Raina a nod, wishing her good luck. Raina nodded back, her determination clear. The crowd sensed the mutual respect between the two, setting the stage for an intense match. Gareth's voice boomed, signaling the start of the match. Raina wasted no time, bolting toward Liam with the speed of a lightning strike. Raina's assault was relentless, her movements a blur as she pushed Liam onto the defensive. The crowd gasped, thinking she might just overwhelm him in seconds flat. But Liam wasn't about to go down without a fight. With a grunt, he swung his sword with all his might, the heavy strike aimed right at Raina. Raina barely had time to react, but her instincts kicked in. She crossed her arms, blocking the strike just in time. The clash sent a shockwave through the air, making the crowd gasp. Zeke's voice cut through the tension, reminding Liam that this fight wasn't just about strength, it was about control. Pure strength, no aura. Liam's got some serious flexibility going on, allowing him to pull off some wild, unpredictable moves. Raina, on the other hand, was all about that stretchy, elastic energy, countering Liam's every move. From the outside, it looked like a pretty even match, but Zeke's eyes saw more than met the eye. Zeke could see the shift, the subtle tells that most would miss. Raina charged with a force that shattered the ground beneath her, the sheer power of her dash leaving cracks in its wake. Liam was left stunned, his guard completely broken. And then, boom, literally, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the air. Liam found himself on his knees, gripping his sword like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. The explosion had clearly taken its toll, leaving him struggling to stay in the fight. Just as Liam struggled to stay on his feet, Raina stepped in, her sword pointed directly at him. Gareth's voice boomed, declaring Raina Draker the winner, leaving Liam with no choice but to accept defeat. Despite the loss, a small smile crept onto Liam's face as he thought about the legendary Lightning Knight. In the end, a genius is still a genius, and Liam couldn't help but acknowledge Raina's skill. Felix came rushing over, concern etched on his face as he asked about Liam going into isolated training. Classic Felix, always worrying about the next move. But before Liam could answer, Felix found himself with a knot on his head, and Gareth announced the third match. Talk about bad timing. The spotlight shifted to Liam and Owen as Gareth introduced them. The stage was set for another intense showdown. Owen stepped forward, his eyes locked onto Liam. He had been waiting for this moment and was ready to show that strategy could overpower brute strength any day. Liam, unfazed, smirked slightly. Strategy? Huh? This was going to be interesting. Zeke didn't hold back, calling Owen out for his hypocrisy, secretly wielding a magic spear while denying others the use of aura. Owen, visibly shaken, stammered in disbelief, clearly not expecting his secret to be exposed. Zeke, lifting his sword with a smirk, brushed off Owen's shock. It didn't matter how Owen had planned to fight. because Zeke was confident he would win anyway. With a cold intensity, Zeke challenged Owen to come at him, ready to ruin his opponent's plans and secure his victory.